I beg your pardon, can you tell us what period? I'm losing track of where in history we are.
Me too, Tuck. Me too. Wait. When did the Polish fight and like try to spread their seed in Ukraine? You think I'm lying? Who would lie about these things that I printed? Read them for yourself. No, that's not what he said. He said, Vlad, boy, my boy, what? Vlad, you know I can't do that, Vlad. You know, I'll try. I'll try, man. I mean. All right, so we're gonna watch this, and we're going to review it. We're gonna comment on it. We're going to fully transform. None of you are here. None of you are here to watch Tucker Carlson. You're all here to see me comment on Tucker Carlson talking to Putin. It's the only reason you're all here. However, robots don't always know that. So even though we are going to fully color commentate and completely change the meaning of this interview here, because I think this will be fascinatingly hilarious because Tucker is a goofball at the end of the day. I'm going to be privating the stream once it's done. So once this is done, stream's going private, and we'll see if it can be edited in such a way that no one gets in trouble. You'd rather watch Lofty at this point? Well, go watch Lofty. He's great. I don't even know if he's live, so sucks to suck. Make Tucker green like the Emp Lemon video. I probably can, actually. Hold on. Filters. Add a filter. Color correction. It takes two, baby. What is the hue shift for green? There we go. Like that? You want that? Is that the Tucker you hoped for? There you go. That's the ultimate Tuck. All right, let's put this. Age of Empires over here. Are Lofty jokes landing tonight? I don't know. Because they never took off in the first place. So yeah, here's what we're hoping for. We're hoping for... Now, I've been in Moscow for a few days now. I've noticed I haven't seen any woke advertisements anywhere. I want that question. I want the... Why is it I'm not finding any pride flags as I walk through the streets of Moscow? That's the one I want. I want the I want Tuck going full and I'm gonna call him Tuck, because he and I go way back. Tuck is gonna look at Vlad and give him the full anti-woke questionnaire. And we'll see. We'll see what we get. Maybe we'll get it. Maybe we won't get it. And behind that, should I do single player since I'm like the only one here? Might as well, right? Campaigns. Oh, I can do a campaign. Where's the Tamerlane? The Last Cons. I guess it's technically Western Europe, Eastern Europe, South Asia, India. Those are DLCs. Caucasus? No. All right, we'll just have to make our own. We'll just have to make our own campaign. My biggest hope is Tuck actually met the green MMN and Linkara losing his shit. We'll do a skirmish, and I will be the... Who should I be? I've been Vikings like the whole time. I feel like I should be somebody else. I've been Japanese the whole time. Should I be Vikings? Warships, chieftains, infantry deal bonus damage to cavalry, generate gold when killing villagers. That's pretty funny, actually. Chinese, Celts. Let's be Portuguese got a crazy gun. Organ gun for siege. I think we'll be the Portuguese. So we'll be the Portuguese. And what should we do here? The Lithuanians? The Tatars? Slavs? We'll make them the Slavs. That's what we'll do. That'll be just one-on-one. Whitish color versus blue color. That's what it looks like in mine. A map size is going to be large. Yeah, I want to be able to like keep going with this map for a while. So let's do a large one. Our random map pool is going to be continental. That's what I want. A random continental map. That way we can get some water going in on this. Saracens. Imagine playing as the Proto-Brazilians. Yeah, that's the only way we're going now. Everything else standard, that'll be fine. And I've got a little bit of audio from the game there. Let's make sure we've got Tuck.
Vladimir Putin.
Vladimir Putin? He's really got that interviewer makeup face right now. That just every wrinkle has been filled in with like foundation, and like his skin is so cold you can like see the lightning and everything behind his eyes. So he's just like, I want to not be here right now. More archivists. That's the goal. Let's get it done. Introduce away.
An interview with the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, shot February 6, 2024, at about
2 days ago.
Behind us, which is, of course, the Kremlin. The interview,
the
as
Kreml.
you will see if you watch it, is primarily about the war in progress, the war in Ukraine, how it started, what's happening, and most pressingly, how it might end. One note before you watch. At the beginning of the interview, we asked the most obvious question, which is, why did you do this? Did you feel a threat, an imminent physical threat? And that's your justification.
That is one thing I don't like about most interview type questions is people will just say like, why did you do that? Was it this reason? And it's like, don't ask, was it the like X reason or Y reason? Just say why, or just ask why, you know? There's this thing that people do where they'll say, why did you go to the grocery store? Was it to pick up milk? And if you went for milk and eggs or, you know, whatever else you were buying, you'd be like, oh yeah, I went for milk. Because no one needs to know that you went for eggs, but if you leave the question open-ended, you might get a better answer. So I hate those sort of like semi-closed questions. Should have used chapstick on him instead of lipstick. Why?
And the answer we got shocked us. Putin went on for a very long time, probably half an hour, about the history of Russia going back to the 8th century. And honestly, we thought this was a filibustering technique and found it annoying and interrupted him several times. And he responded he was annoyed by the interruption. But we concluded in the end, for what it's worth, that it was not a filibustering technique. There was no time limit on the interview. We ended it after more than 2 hours. Instead, what you're about to see seemed to us sincere, whether you agree with it or not. Vladimir Putin believes that Russia has a historic claim to parts of Western Ukraine.
Of course he does.
So our opinion would be to view it in that light, as a sincere expression of what he thinks. And with that, here it is. Mr. President, thank you. On February 22nd, 2022, you addressed your country in a nationwide address when the conflict in Ukraine started. And you said that you were acting because you had come to the conclusion that the United States, through NATO, might initiate a, quote, surprise attack on our country. And to American ears, that sounds paranoid. Tell us why you believe the United States might strike Russia out of the blue. How did you conclude that?
It's not that America.
There's something always good about those. Like, they start talking in their language and then switch over to the narrator voice. Something just makes me laugh about that whole aesthetic. Oh, we got a clip.
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
The United States was going to launch a surprise strike on Russia. I didn't say that. Are we having a talk show or a serious conversation?
Here's the quote.
Why are you laughing?
Thank you. It's a form.
Why are you laughing? Are we having a talk show or a serious conversation? Serious question. Why you think this, Putin? Just answer the question. Dang it.
Formidable, serious.
Because your basic education is in history, as far as I understand.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, I will take only 30 seconds or 1 minute to give you a short reference to history for giving you a little historical background.
Please.
I tend not to believe him.
Let's look where our relationship with Ukraine started from. Where did Ukraine come from?
Where did
Russian
Ukraine
state
come
started
from?
gathering itself
my God.
as a centralized statehood.
Oh, Putin, you're so funny. You're so silly. No, the follow-up should be, answer my question. Answer me. I asked you a question, answer me. I'm going to give history
And it is
lessons.
considered to be the year of the establishment of the Russian state in 862, when the townspeople of Novgorod invited a Varangian prince, Rurik, from Scandinavia
A
to reign.
Ferengian prince?
In 1862, Russia celebrated the 1000th anniversary of its statehood.
That's a long time,
And
actually.
in Novgorod, there is a memorial dedicated to the 1000th anniversary of the country.
Okay, 1000.
In 882, Rurik's successor, Prince Oleg,
you're saying
who was
just you're
actually
old?
playing the role of regent at Rurik's young son, because Rurik had died by that time, came to Kiev.
Пришел в Киев.
He ousted two brothers who apparently had once been members of Rurik's squad. So Russia began to develop with two centers of power, Kiev and Novgorod. The next very significant date in the history of Russia was 988. This was the baptism of Russia, when Prince Vladimir, the great-grandson of Rurik, baptized Russia and adopted Orthodoxy, or Eastern Christianity. From this time, the centralized Russian state began to strengthen. Why? Because of the single territory, integrated economic ties, one and the same language, and
Because they were huge. Huge and had resources. It's not that crazy. You can't cook the tuck. Look
after the baptism of Russia, the same faith and rule of
at this face. This little... do I believe what you're saying? I don't know. I'm gonna stare at you like this, though, until you're done talking, so I can ask my next question with my caution yellow tie.
the prince. The centralized Russian state began to take shape. Back in the Middle Ages, Prince Yaroslav the Wise introduced the order of succession to the
Yaroslav?
throne.
That's pretty funny.
But after he passed away, it became complicated for various reasons. The throne was passed not directly from father to eldest son, but from the prince who had passed away to his brother, then to his sons in different lines. All this led to the fragmentation and the end of Rus as a single state.
Rus?
There was nothing special about it. The same was happening then in Europe.
Раздробленное русское государство стало
everybody's
легкой добычей.
But the
What is
fragmented Russian
that?
state became
What's that
an
word
easy
supposed
prey
to
to
be?
the empire created earlier by Genghis Khan.
Хан Баты пришли на Русь,
His successors, namely Batu Khan, came to Rus, plundered and ruined nearly all the cities. The southern part,
Is that what Heath Ledger looked like in his Joker role when he said, "Why so serious?" What is he talking about? Does he really believe this? He's, you know, given the history of Russia that he believes, which is that Russia is a great, mighty country that is unstoppable and has always been the best in the area. The only things that have ever gotten in Russia's way are the outside world. It's kind of what I think I'm going to learn from this. Is he saying he's just trying to get the party going again? He I think has made it clear on multiple occasions that his entire goal has been just reintroduction of the USSR, has he not? That's sort of what I have heard, what I have felt. Let's get a fishing ship going. Oh, not enough wood. Go cut some wood. More wood, everybody. Am I... Cool. Feudal age it is. We don't like Rus. Never forget what he did to the stars.
including Kiev, by the way, and some other cities simply lost independence, while northern cities preserved some of their sovereignty. They had to pay tribute to the horde, but they managed to preserve some part of their sovereignty. And then a unified Russian state began to take shape with its center in Moscow. The southern part of Russian lands, including Kiev, began to gradually gravitate towards another magnet, the center that was emerging in Europe. This was the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. It was even called the Lithuanian-Russian Duchy, because Russians were a significant part of this population. They spoke the old Russian language and were Orthodox. But then there was a unification, the union of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland.
Grand Duchy. Grand Duchy is
A
funny.
few years later, another
term.
union was signed, but this time already in the religious sphere. Some of the Orthodox priests became subordinate to the Pope. Thus, these lands became part of the Polish-Lithuanian state.
The old polylit state, you know? Classic.
During decades, the Poles were engaged in Polonization of this part of the population.
That sounded like you said the
They
Poles were
language
involved
there,
with the
trying to entrench the
Polonization. It's
idea
like,
that this
we're gonna
population
Polize this
was not
state.
exactly Russians. That because they lived on the fringe.
if Putin truly wanted to revive the USSR, he should be sending dogs back into space. Is he claiming everything from Ukraine up towards Finland is Rus? Sure sounds that way. I believe the specific things that we're hearing here are many moons ago, Russia was all. And I'm going to make Russia all again. That's sort of what we're getting here is here is the history of like everything we once owned and we're going to own it again. That's really the feel. Can I put a fish trap just right here randomly? I'm going to go back to fishing. What kind of interview is this? So far, it's one where you just stare at somebody. Give them one of these faces. They've advanced to the feudal age. Oh no.
They were Ukrainians.
Занимается
Originally, the word Ukrainian meant that the person was living on the outskirts of the state, along the fringes, or was engaged in a border patrol service. It didn't mean
What? Okay. Marked as Ukraine. Ukraine. Where's the entomology? Where's my entomology line? All right, here we go. Originally, the word Ukranka, from which the proper noun has been derived, formed the particular root cry and the prefix oib that later merged with the root due to meta-analysis. The ambiguity due to polysemous nature of the root cry is meaning either boundary or edge of a certain area and defined by certain boundaries. Nevertheless, both meanings allow for the formation of valid toponym. For example, the country name Denmark is a composition of Danish boundary. Okay. Interpretation as borderland. So it's the borderlands of Russia, or as region, country. Ukrainian scholars, especially in Ukrainian Slavic philology, have interpreted the term Ukraina as a sense of region, principality, country, province, or the land around, and land pertaining to a given area. Okay. Interesting. It's like, my land is called this land. It seems, it's kind of a strange to name it. So he's saying Ukrainians are trash people? I don't think he's saying that yet. He's just saying that Ukraine was literally just like the hinterlands. They were ours.
in any particular ethnic group.
поляки всячески
So the Poles were trying to,
относились
in every possible way, to colonize this part of the Russian lands and actually treated it rather harshly, not to say cruelly. All that
So the Poles were bad to the Ukrainians many moons ago. Is that what he's trying to get at there? Yeah, keep fishing, buddy. That's like I know we make Polish jokes and everything, but that seems like actually mean to Polish people. Did he skip over the Prussians? I think so, unless someone he's talking about currently is actually Prussian and they just didn't like translate it at all for some reason.
that led to the fact that this part of the Russian lands began to struggle for their rights.
писали письма.
They wrote letters to Warsaw demanding that their rights be observed and people be commissioned here, including
Forced
to
right
Kiev.
across.
I beg your pardon, can you tell us what period? I'm losing track of where in history we are.
Me too, Tuck. Me too. Wait, when did the Polish fight and like try to spread their seed in Ukraine? I think I missed that part in history class.
Это было
The Polish
это
oppression
было
of
в 13
Ukraine.
веке. Это было
It was in the 13th century.
Ну вот, в 13 веке.
Classic 13th century.
Значит, и
Now I will tell you what happened later
How far later? A week?
and give the dates so that there is no confusion.
Oh, thank you.
And in 1654, even a bit earlier,
Чуть раньше даже люди, которые контролировали
the
власть,
people who were in control of the authority
So it's like, wait a minute, which episode of the... Wait, did I skip that one? I thought it was filler. Papa Putin's History of Russia, Part 1, yeah. Oh, man. That's funny. Actually, no, I want to do another land here.
over that part of the Russian lands
чтобы присылали к ним
addressed Warsaw, I repeat, demanding that they send them to rulers of Russian origin and Orthodox faith. When Warsaw did not answer them, and in fact rejected their demands, they turned to Moscow, so that Moscow took them away.
Чтобы вы не думали, что я что-то придумал. Дима.
So that you don't think that I'm inventing things,
Oh yeah. What do you got? Is it like
I'll give you these documents.
documents?
Well, it doesn't sound like you're inventing it. I'm not sure why it's relevant to what happened 2 years
Не-не-не,
ago.
да все-таки.
You think I'm lying? Who would lie about these things that I printed? Read them for yourself. I don't think you're lying. what a weirdo. Oh my goodness. You knew I would say these things. Bring the proof documents. No one wants to read the manga, Putin. Nobody wants to read your manga.
Still,
Документы из архива.
these are documents from the archives, copies.
Здесь письма. Богдана
Here are the letters from Bogdan Khmelnytsky,
контролировал власть в этой
the man who then controlled the power in this part of the Russian lands
Bogdan
that
Halutsky?
is now called Ukraine.
А после того, как
He wrote to Warsaw demanding that their rights be upheld,
с просьбой взять их,
and after being refused, he began to write letters to Moscow, asking to take them under the strong hand of the Moscow Tsar. There are copies of these documents. I will leave them for your good memory. There is a translation.
You'll do well to keep these documents. They are not lined with rubles. How did the paperless archive survive 700 years? Yeah, wouldn't it be stone tablets? What are we writing on?
Into Russian, you can translate it into English later.
потому что
Russia
Oh,
would not agree to admit them straight away, assuming that the war with Poland would start. Nevertheless, in 1654, the Pan-Russian Assembly of top clergy and landowners, headed by the Tsar,
часть древнерусских земель вошла
which was the representative body of the power of the old Russian state, decided to include a part of the old Russian lands into Moscow Kingdom. As expected, the war with Poland began.
as we
It lasted 13
expected.
years, and then in 1654,
по-моему,
a truce was concluded.
мир с Польшей. Вечный мир, как это было.
And 32 years later, I think, a peace treaty with Poland, which they called Eternal Peace, was signed.
Eternal peace.
Отошла к России.
And these lands,
lie.
the whole left bank of Dnieper, including
Dnieper.
Kiev, went to Russia.
Затем, во времена
And the whole
I
right
guess it's
bank of
fake
Dnieper
words.
remained in Poland.
вернула все исторические земли.
Under
Did he just suggest the SARS were Republican? No, I think he's suggesting they're a republic. Maybe? Were they like representative in some capacity, even if like not everybody got to vote? If he makes it back without being arrested at the airport for spying. The documents are in the folder.
the rule of Catherine the Great, Russia reclaimed all of its historical lands, including in the south and west.
Да, а вот
This all lasted until the revolution.
воспользовавшись
Before World War I,
украинизацией,
Austrian General Staff relied on the ideas of Ukrainianization and started actively promoting the ideas of Ukraine and the
Ukrainianization?
в преддверии мировой войны
What a strange term.
было стремление ослабить потенциал.
Their motive was obvious. Just before World War I, they wanted to weaken the potential enemy and secure themselves favorable conditions in the border area. So the idea which had emerged in Poland that people residing in that territory were allegedly not really Russians, but rather belonged to a special ethnic group, Ukrainians, started being propagated by the Austrian General Staff.
которые говорили необходимо.
Okay, so the Austrians are telling the Poles that the Ukrainian people are Ukrainian and not just Russian people. Is that what we're getting? The Austro-Hungary?
As far back as the 19th century, theorists calling for Ukrainian independence appeared.
Украинской независимости говорили.
All those, however, claimed that Ukraine should have a very good relationship with Russia.
Настаивали. Вот.
They insisted on that.
После революции 1917 года
After the 1917 revolution,
старались восстановить государственность, развивалась
Control.
гражданская
The Bolsheviks sought to restore the statehood, and the civil war began, including the hostilities with Poland.
войны в 1920
Control
году,
over here.
которые, по которым западные
In 1921, peace with Poland was proclaimed, and under that treaty, the right bank of Dnieper River once again was given back to Poland.
Okay.
в 1939
In 1939, after Poland cooperated with Hitler,
начала с Гитлером, а Польша сотрудничала.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Somebody remind me. What? Did Poland cooperate with Hitler on purpose? In September 1939, Poland was invaded and occupied by two powers, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Acting in accordance with the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, Germany acquired 48% of the former Polish territory. Wait a minute. Are you telling me the fact that Russia and the Soviets had an agreement to split up Poland meant that half of Poland was working with Hitler? Wait a minute. You're gonna make. I've got some serious tuck face right now.
did collaborate with Hitler, you know? Hitler offered Poland peace and a treaty of friendship. An alliance demanding in return that Poland give back to Germany the so-called Danzig corridor, which connected the bulk of Germany with East Prussia and Königsberg.
Основную часть Германии с Königsbergом и с Восточной Пруссией.
After World War I, this territory was transferred to Poland, and instead of Danzig, a city of Danzig emerged.
И вместо Данцига появился.
Hitler asked them to give it amicably, but they refused.
Of course.
Still, they collaborated with Hitler
of course.
and engaged together
И вместе занялись
in the partitioning of Czechoslovakia.
But may I ask you, you're making the case that Ukraine, certainly parts of Ukraine,
Wait a minute.
Ukraine is in effect Russia has been for hundreds of years. Why wouldn't you just take it when you became president 24 years ago?
Why'd you bitch out and reclaiming your land, Putin? Oh.
You have nuclear weapons, they don't. If it's actually your land, why did you wait so long?
Sure.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, tell me.
I'm coming to that.
Oh.
This briefing is coming to an end. It might be boring, but it
not
explains
boring.
many things.
You just don't know how it's relevant.
Ну, отлично, тогда мне
It's not boring, it's just irrelevant. Oh, oh man. What I want to know, like, what I wouldn't give to speak Russian just enough that I can know what the translator is saying on the other end of Putin's mic. Like, what was just told to Putin that he had just said? What did he hear? I don't think it's relevant. Or did he hear, oh, continue your story, good friend? Oh, this is hilarious. More food.
очень
Good. Good.
Good.
I'm so gratified that you appreciate that.
после
Thank you.
перед Вторым мировым
So,
войной,
before
когда
World War II,
Why was his response good to, I don't understand what this has to do with anything? What? That doesn't make any sense. As someone who watches translated media at all times, I feel like someone messed up on one side of this one. Is this guy fishing? Let's build our this guy, or this guy. 2 of those. Let's get ourselves up to the next level.
Poland collaborated with Hitler, and although it did not yield to Hitler's demands, it still participated in the partitioning of Czechoslovakia together with Hitler, as the Poles had not given the Danzig corridor to Germany and went too far, pushing Hitler to start World War II by attacking them. Why was it Poland against whom the war started on 1st September 1939? Poland turned out to be uncompromising, and Hitler had nothing to do but start implementing his plans with Poland.
Well, I guess I've got nothing else to do but to not work with these people that were working with me. Horsies. And what I'll just do, I'll do archers at the same time.
By the way, the USSR, I have read some archive documents, behaved very honestly. It asked Poland's permission to transit its troops through the Polish territory to help Czechoslovakia. But the then Polish foreign minister said that if the Soviet planes flew over Poland, they would be downed over the territory of Poland. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that the war began, and Poland fell prey to the policies it had pursued against Czechoslovakia, as under the well-known Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Part of the
Hey, the Molotov-Ribbentrop. We just read that name. USSR, very honest. KGB approves. That's what I'm hearing. We did good. Very good. I think I can just boat my way out of this guy's area. Let's do careening, makes ship less vulnerable to missile attack, +1 with piercing. We should do like all the ship upgrades as we get them available. We'll do a quick patrol over here.
territory, including western Ukraine, was to be given to Russia. Thus, Russia, which was then named the USSR, regained its historical lands. After the victory in the Great Patriotic War, as we call World War II, all those territories were ultimately enshrined as belonging to Russia, to the USSR. As for Poland,
so the USSR was actually just getting its ancient lands. And Putin is also just getting the ancient lands. So he's just like a new version of historical Russian good guys. That's what I'm getting from this. Burn him. Bo, burn him. Another galley. So it never thought about trying to take the rest of the West. Did it stop there?
it received, apparently in compensation, the lands which had originally been German.
Hurt him.
The eastern parts of Germany, these are now western lands of Poland. Of course, Poland regained access to the Baltic Sea and Danzig, which was once again given its Polish name. So this was how this situation developed. In 1922, when the USSR was being established,
1922, we got a year.
the Bolsheviks started building the USSR and established the Soviet Ukraine, which had never existed before.
Right.
Stalin insisted that those republics be included in the USSR as autonomous entities.
Autonomous entity.
For some inexplicable reason, Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state, insisted that they be entitled to withdraw from the USSR. And again, for some unknown reasons, he transferred to that newly established Soviet Republic of Ukraine some of the lands together with people living there, even though those lands had never been called Ukraine, and yet they were made part of that Soviet Republic of Ukraine. Those lands included the Black Sea region, which was received under Catherine the Great, and which had no historical connection with Ukraine whatsoever. Even if we go as far back as 1654, when these lands returned to Russian Empire, that territory was the size of 3 to 4 regions of modern Ukraine, with no Black Sea region. That was completely out of the question.
That's out of the question. Never would my ancestors have done such a thing.
1654.
Exactly.
You obviously have encyclopedic knowledge of this region, but why didn't you make this case for the first 22 years as president that Ukraine wasn't a real country?
Да. Итак, значит, Советская Украина получила.
The Soviet Union was given a great deal of territory that had never belonged to it, including the Black Sea region.
Когда Россия их получила в результате.
At some point, when Russia received them as an outcome of the Russo-Turkish Wars, they were called New Russia or Novorossiya. But that does not matter. What matters is
Okay, so
that
I can cross
Lenin,
there.
the founder of the Soviet state, established Ukraine that
Isn't Lenin, like, his whole body is, like, still, like, capable, like, out there? Not capable, he's been, like, perfectly preserved in, like, that big glass box, right? That would be wild. That would be something. Can this boat cross there? Can I just build a wall of caravels up there?
way.
В составе СССР
For decades, the Ukrainian Soviet Republic developed as part of the USSR,
по непонятным причинам занимались.
and for unknown reasons again, the Bolsheviks were engaged in Ukrainianization.
Yeah, why would the
It was
Bolsheviks
not merely
do that?
because the Soviet leadership was composed to a great extent of those originate.
Can't watch stream tonight. Visiting my brother and dad. I have a 2-hour drive to the casino soon because weekly free spins. Woo! Spin it up!
From
Отказался
Ukraine.
Украины и других
Rather, it was explained by the general policy of indigenization pursued by the Soviet Union. Same things were done in other Soviet republics. This involved promoting national languages and national cultures, which is not a bad in principle. That is how the Soviet Ukraine was created. After the World War II, Ukraine received, in addition to the lands that had belonged to Poland before the war, part of the lands that had previously belonged to Hungary and Romania. So Romania and Hungary had some of their lands taken away and given to the Soviet Ukraine, and they still remain part of Ukraine. So in this sense, we have every reason to affirm that Ukraine is an artificial state that was shaped at Stalin's will.
Do you believe Hungary has a right to take its land back from Ukraine and that other nations have a right to go back to their 1654 borders?
Ну, я не знаю, как границы.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. I just told you, all is Russian. Why do you not hear me? Keep firing. It's so funny. Just say yes. Everyone else knows you're trying to say yes. Light cavalry. Upgrade to crossbowman. Elite skirmisher. Pikeman. Longswordman. Give you better armor. Do more damage versus building. I like that. Light cavalry. Bloodlines. Husbandry. Not enough gold.
Sure, whether they should go back to the 1654 borders.
Все считают, что
But given Stalin's time, so-called Stalin's regime, which as many claim saw numerous violations
Some people say regime. You know, me not so much. Wild, man. Oh, and I want all of these guys to be meeting up here. Okay, you join the gold diggers.
of human rights and violations of the rights of other states.
государств, то в этом смысле, конечно, вполне можно.
Sometimes
Ну,
when he
если не
speaks,
говорить
I
о том, что
hear
они имеют право.
One may say that they
Indian.
could claim back those lands of theirs while having no right to do that. It is at least understandable.
Have you told Viktor Orban that he can have part of Ukraine?
Никогда не говорил.
Never. I have never told him, not a single time.
У нас с ним даже на этот счет не было никаких разговоров. Но мне достоверно
We have not even had any conversation on that, but I actually know for sure that Hungarians who live there
они, конечно, хотят вернуться на свою историю.
wanted to get back to their historical land.
Интересную историю.
Oh, that's what you know?
Moreover, I would like to share a very interesting story with you.
One time,
Значит,
I digress.
Russia, very big. Then Russia, not so big. I make Russia big again. Funny story, right? I don't know why I went Borat on that one. It's just so wild. We're probably good on food. Should probably keep getting more people on the gold train. I'm also gonna crack a sody, because I'm a thirsty boy.
It's a personal one.
из,
Somewhere in the early 80s, I went on a road trip in a car from then Leningrad across the Soviet Union through Kiev. Made a stop in Kiev and then went to western Ukraine.
название
I went to the town of Beregovoye.
Bit of
And all
giveaway.
the names of towns and villages there were in Russian and in a language I did not understand, in Hungarian.
It's like you want to give it to Tucker that he is very good at getting the other side of the table to speak, to just keep talking. But he's also just kind of letting the other side of the table ramble. Like at some point, I don't know, maybe we don't let the guy just keep giving his like my personal history of my part of the world. You know, maybe sometime. I don't know. Seems like normal to me that you wouldn't just let any leader in the free world, or I guess free world, in the world, just keep talking and talking and talking. At some point you have to be like, hey, what are you talking about, man? Why are we now spending, how long has this video been at this point? Hold on. It's been 20, oh, it's only been 20 minutes. Gee, Baloo, this guy's got a story to tell. Holy crap. Papa Putin puts me to bed with his story time. That's what this is going to be called moving forward. Estupro. Unit to train, upgrade monks. Okay, I want to try monkery. Okay. Are we good to upgrade? Not enough gold. Oh, I need more gold. This doesn't take gold. This takes a little gold. Yeah, that's it.
In Russian and in Hungarian. Not in Ukrainian, in Russian and in Hungarian. I was driving through some kind of village and There were men sitting next to the houses, and they were wearing black three-piece suits and black cylinder hats. I asked, are they some kind of entertainers?
Black
I was
cylinder
told,
hats.
no, they were not entertainers, they're Hungarians. I said, what are they doing here? What do you mean? This is their land, they live here. This was during the Soviet time in the 1980s. They preserved the Hungarian language, Hungarian names, and all their national costumes. They are Hungarians and they feel
National
themselves to be
costumes.
Hungarians. And of course, when now there is an infringement,
Well, that is, and there's a lot of that, though. I think many nations are upset about Transylvania as well, as you obviously know. But many nations feel frustrated by the redrawn borders of the wars of the 20th century and wars going back 1,000 years, the ones that you mentioned. But the fact is that you didn't make this case in public until 2 years ago, February. And in the case that you made, which I read today, you explain at great length that you felt a physical threat from the West in NATO, including potentially a nuclear threat, and that's what got you to move. Is that a fair characterization of what you said?
Я понимаю, что мои длинные диалоги, они...
I understand that my long speeches probably fall outside of the genre of the interview. That is why I asked you at the beginning, are we going to have a serious talk or a show?
Так что не обижай.
Wait. That's why I asked you at the beginning, are we gonna have a serious talk or a show? And he said serious talk, so you decided to do the Putin show of the history of what Putin thinks the world is? What? Doesn't make any sense. You don't make any dang sense, Pooty. Pooty man.
You said a serious talk, so bear with me, please. We're coming to the
You gotta let moderator. I need to finish my story. Nothing I say will make sense until I finished everything that I need to say. It's good. These relics.
point where the Soviet Ukraine was established. Then, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and everything that Russia had generously bestowed on Ukraine was dragged away by the latter. I'm coming to a very important point of today's agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're getting to the point, Putin. Come on.
After all, the collapse of the Soviet Union was effectively initiated by the Russian leadership.
What? He blames the Russian leadership. Does that feel disingenuous, or does he think that's actually what he feels? He probably does believe that it was effectively started by the leadership because they sucked, would be like his follow-up to that, right? Like, it's gotta be.
I do not understand what the Russian leadership was guided by at the time, but I suspect there were several reasons to think everything would be fine. First, I think that then Russian leadership believed that the fundamentals of the relationship between Russia and Ukraine were, in fact, a common language. More than 90% of the population there spoke Russian. Family
You know how many places speak English, but we don't all think we're English? Like, that seems like such a goofy thing to be like, this is how I know that they're legitimate. Did that monk pick that up yet? Okay. Bring it back, buddy.
ties. Every third person there had some kind of family or friendship ties. Common culture, common history, finally, common faith, coexistence with a single state for centuries, and deeply interconnected economies.
Economical. I heard that word.
All of these were so fundamental. All these elements together make our good relationships inevitable. The second point is a very important one. I want you, as an American citizen, and your viewers to hear about this as well. The former Russian leadership assumed that the Soviet Union had ceased to exist, and therefore there were no longer any ideological dividing lines.
There were no ideological
Russia even
dividing
agreed
lines.
voluntarily and proactively to the collapse of the Soviet Union and believed that this would be understood by the so-called civilized West as an invitation for
What do you mean so-called civilized? We're civilized as hell.
cooperation and association. That is what Russia was expecting, both from the United States and the so-called collective West as a whole. There were smart people, including in Germany. Egon Bahr, a major politician of the Social Democratic Party, who insisted in his personal conversations with the Soviet leadership on the brink of the collapse of the Soviet Union that a new security system should be established in Europe. Help should be given to unify Germany, but
With how far in the area I've only gotten about an hour in. We are only 26 minutes in to the interview. We have gotten through, I believe, Papa Putin's history of everything Russian.
a new system should be also established to include the United States, Canada, Russia, and other Central European countries.
At least he's keeping us included.
But NATO needs not to expand. That's what he said. If NATO expands, everything would be just the same as during the Cold War, only closer to Russia's borders. That's all. He was a wise old man, but no one listened to him. In fact, he got angry once. If, he said, you don't listen to me, I'm never setting my foot in Moscow once again. Everything happened just as he had said.
Well, of course, it did come true, and you've mentioned this many times. I think it's a fair point, and many in America thought that relations between Russia and the United States would be fine with the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War, that the opposite happened. But you've never explained why you think that happened, except to say that the West fears a strong Russia, but we have a strong China the West does not seem very afraid of. What about Russia, do you think, convinced policymakers they had to take it down?
The West is afraid of strong China more than it fears a strong Russia, because Russia has 150 million people and China has 1.5 billion population, and its economy is growing by leaps and bounds, or 5% a year. It used to be even more. But that's enough for China. As Bismarck once put it, potentials are the most important. China's potential is enormous. It is the biggest economy in the world today in terms of purchasing power parity and the size of the economy.
Oh, he's a sad boy because China's got a bigger wallet than he has. That's the real secret to all of this. See what I'm doing here? Yep, you got it. Kill these guys. I hate these guys. Where'd my monk go? Okay, whatever.
It has already overtaken the United States quite a long time ago, and it is growing at a rapid clip. Let's not talk about who is afraid of whom. Let's not reason in such terms. And let's get into the fact that after 1991, when Russia expected that
Back
it would
in
be welcomed into the
1991!
brotherly family of civilized nations, nothing like this happened. You tricked us. I don't mean you personally when I say you. Of course, I'm talking about the United States. The promise was that NATO would not expand eastward, but it happened 5 times. There were 5 waves of expansion. We tolerated all that. We were trying to persuade them. We were saying, please don't. We are as bourgeois now as you are. We are market economy and there's no communist party power. Let's negotiate.
This guy.
Moreover, I have also said this publicly before. There was a moment when a certain rift started growing between us. Before that, Yeltsin came to the United States.
Yeltsin.
Remember, he spoke in Congress and said the good words. God bless America. Everything he said were signals.
Oh, it was the
Let
good
us
words.
in. Remember the developments in Yugoslavia before the Yeltsin was lavished with praise as soon as the developments in
I was like, oh, he came. He said such nice things about America. He said, go America, go New York Jets, my favorite. Like, what does that have to do with any of this, bro? Taking a drink every time Boris Yeltsin is involved. Oh no. I drank a Coca-Cola and then I puked. I am forever sad the boy now. What is up?
Yugoslavia started, he raised his voice in support of Serbs, and we couldn't but raise our voices for Serbs in their defense. I understand that there were complex processes underway there, I do, but Russia could not help raising its voice in support of Serbs, because Serbs are also a special and close to us nation, with Orthodox culture and so on. It's a nation that has suffered so much for generations. Well, regardless, what is important
have a wall of
is
monks.
that
I'm gonna go for the
Yeltsin
monk
expressed
win.
his support. What did the United States do? In violation of international law and the UN Charter, it started bombing Belgrade. It was the United States that let the genie out of the bottle.
Wait, hold on a second. Hold on a second. What it was the It was the U.S. that started the bombing of Belgrade. NATO bombing of Yugoslavia. Kosovo War, or part of the Kosovo War. Let's see. What do we got? NATO carried out an aerial bombing campaign against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia during the Kosovo War. The airstrikes lasted in 1999 to June 1999. The bombings continued until an agreement was reached, which led to the withdrawal of the Yugoslav army from Kosovo and the establishment of the United UN peacekeeping mission in Kosovo. Okay. The official NATO operation code was Operation Allied Force. The United States called it Operation Noble Anvil. They called it Merciful Angel. NATO's intervention was prompted by Yugoslavia's bloodshed and ethnic cleansing of Albanians, which drove the Albanians into neighboring countries and had the potential to destabilize the region. Yugoslavia's actions had already provoked the condemnation by international organizations and agencies such as the UN, NATO, and various INGOs. Yugoslavia's refusal to sign the Rambouillet Accords was initially offered as justification for NATO's use of force. NATO countries attempted to gain authorization from the UN Security Council for military action, but were opposed by China and Russia, who indicated they would veto such a measure. As a result, NATO launched its campaign without the UN's approval, stating that it was a humanitarian intervention. The UN Charter prohibits the use of force except in the case of a decision by the Security Council under Chapter 7 or self-defense against an armed attack, neither of which were present in this case. By the end of the war, the Yugoslavs had killed 1,500 to 2,100 combatants. 10,000 civilians were killed or missing, and with 85% of those being Kosovar Albanian. And some 848,000 were expelled from Kosovo. The NATO bombing killed about almost 1 million people expelled from Kosovo. Jeez. The NATO bombing killed about 1,000 members of the Yugoslav security forces, in addition to between 489 and 528 civilians. Oh, that's ridiculous. Those are crazy numbers. 1,000 of the Yugoslavian security forces and like 528 of the civilians. It sucks for every civilian that dies. It really, really is like the worst part of any battle, any war. But that is an amazing ratio. That is a really good ratio. When Yugoslavia broke up Bosnia, was before Kosovo, you think? Yugoslavia reminds me of the... You think there... So there's an earlier Yugoslavian problem? Let's see. Let's go to history. Foundation. The Yugoslav Wars. Bosnian War. Here we go. Hold on. Serbian separatist movement, Republic of Serbia, did not consider himself. In 1995, following Operation Storm, a military offensive by the Croatian army and NATO involvement in the Bosnian War, President agreed to negotiate as the Serbian position with Bosnia had become substantially worse. Economic collapse during the Yugoslav wars and then Kosovo war. I don't know if when I did bombing of Belgrade, that was the... It only comes up with the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia. 1999, NATO. Yeah. Yugoslavia broke up into Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, Kosovo, and a couple others I can't remember the name of. Well, whatever the order is, I'm pretty sure the only bombing of Belgrade was during the Kosovo War.
Moreover, when Russia protested and expressed its resentment, what was said? The UN Charter and international law have become obsolete. Now everyone invokes international law, but at that time they started saying that everything was outdated. Everything had to be changed. Indeed, some things need to be changed, as the balance of power has changed.
They need to be changed. They need to be brought
not in
back.
this manner. Yeltsin was immediately dragged through the mud, accused of alcoholism, of understanding nothing, of knowing nothing. He understood everything, I assure you. Well, I became president in 2000.
He understood everything. That was really ominous.
Over, but we should try to restore relations. Let's reopen the door that Russia had tried to go through. And moreover, I said it publicly, I can reiterate. At a meeting here in the Kremlin with the outgoing President Bill Clinton, right here in the next room, I said to him, I asked him, Bill, do you think if Russia asked to join NATO, do you think it would happen? Suddenly he said, you know, it's interesting. I think so.
No, that's not what he said. He said, Vlad, boy, my boy, what, Vlad, you know I can't do that, Vlad. You know, I'll try, man. I mean, it's been great while I'm here, but like, I can't promise anything. All right, buddy. That's what Bill Clinton said. We all know it. We all know it.
Met for dinner. He said, you know, I've talked to my team. No,
oh,
it's
look.
not possible.
Belgrade was the capital of Yugoslavia. Was bombed in 1999. Yeah, that was the one I was reading about. Perfect. Looks like I got the correct history so far. Estupro. Estupido. I don't know. Hit these rocks, bro. Somebody else. Build more houses. We need to. Yugoslavia was breaking up. Balkanization, yes. Bosnia was 95, 96-ish. Sure. But like, I guess the more subtle point of just what's the point? What's my brain trying to think of here? That the bombing was that when the US was like or NATO specifically was like UN Security Council votes, everyone says help, China and Russia say no. How about if we just help? And he thinks US started it, but I mean, would it not be the person who started all of the other problems that actually started it? That's what it sounds like it'd be to me. Just to make sure we got more food going.
Now. You can ask him. I think he will watch our interview. He'll confirm it. I wouldn't have said anything like that if it hadn't happened. Okay,
Were you
well,
sincere?
it's impossible now.
Would you have joined NATO?
Look, I asked the question, is it possible or not? And the answer
Yes.
I got was no. If I was insincere in my desire to find out what the leadership position was,
But if he had said yes, would you have joined NATO?
if he had said yes, the process of rapprochement would have commenced, and eventually it might have happened if we had seen some sincere wish on the other side of our partners. But it didn't happen. Well, no means no. Okay, fine.
Why do you think that is? Just to get to motive, I know you're clearly bitter about it. I understand. But
You seem
why do you think
pissy.
the West rebuffed you then? Why the hostility? Why did the end of the Cold War not fix the relationship? What motivates this from your point of view?
You said I was bitter about the answer. No, it's not bitterness. It's just a statement of fact. We're not bride and groom, bitterness, resentment. It's not about those kind of matters in such circumstances. We just realized we weren't welcome there, that's all. Okay, fine. But let's build relations in another manner. Let's look for common ground elsewhere. Why we received such a negative response, you should ask your leaders. I can only guess why. Too big a country with its own opinion and so on. And the United States...
You have a lot of people with a lot of opinions that seem to be, you know, different. How can you run country when everyone thinks something different? It makes no sense, you know. NATO basically American and her freeloader friends. It's true. Everyone's just living off our dad's money.
I've seen how issues are being resolved in NATO. I will give you another example now concerning Ukraine. The US leadership exerts pressure, and all NATO members obediently vote, even if they do not like something.
Everyone just sits around Brittany being like, oh, I really want some Chipotle, but, you know, until Brittany says we can go get Chipotle, we can't use her dad's credit card to get our Chipotle. What do we do? And then Brittany looks at him and is like, I want Wendy's. And then we all have to go get Wendy's. I hate it. You're dang straight. Everyone looks at us and is like, oh, shoot, what do we do? And then we tell them what to do or not. I'm sorry. How much of NATO is funded by us? Since 2005, the U.S. shares of NATO's common funding has been set at a concessionary level negotiated with allies, now just over 22%. That's amazing. We only do 22% now? We only do a quarter? A quarter of a 30-nation agreement? Is Chipotle expensive in Canada? Well, you gotta factor in the new underwear that you're gonna have to buy. That's from the NATO comptroller. That one that I just read. I want to build a wonder, so I want to keep building these like auto builder things. They just make my resources go up. It's nice.
Something. Now, I'll tell you what happened in this regard with Ukraine in 2008, although it's being discussed. I'm not going to open a secret to you, say anything new. Nevertheless, after that we tried to build relations in different ways. For example, the events in the Middle East, in Iraq. We were building relations with the United States in a very soft, prudent, cautious manner. I repeatedly raised the issue that the United States should not support separatism or terrorism in the North Caucasus.
Но все равно продолжали.
but they continue to do it anyway.
Политическая
And political
поддержка,
support,
информационная
information
broke my
support,
gate.
financial
финансовая
support,
поддержка, даже
even
военная.
military support came from the United States and its satellites for terrorist groups in the Caucasus.
И формирование в
I once raised this issue with my colleague, also the President of the United States. He says it's
My colleague, you call him president. We work buddies. So funny the way he talks.
impossible. Do you have proof? I said yes. I was prepared for this conversation, and I gave him that proof.
That
He
proof.
looked at it, and you know what he said? I apologize, but that's what happened. I'll quote. He says, "Well, I'm gonna kick their ass." We waited
Well,
and
I'm gonna
waited
kick
for
their
some
ass.
response. There was no reply.
Я говорю директору.
I said to the FSB director, write to the CIA, what is the result of the conversation with President? He wrote one
I'm ready for the Tucker didn't kill himself meme. We've all seen Tucker Must Die. I mean, there's only one ending to this. Oh man. Portando verde. I'm about to run out of ability to make people. I got too many people chopping wood. We're gonna have to send some of these people into battle. All right, people, go get me this. Where are all my boats at?
once, twice, and then we got a reply. We have the answer in the archive. The CIA replied, "We have been working with the opposition in Russia. We believe that this is the right thing to do, and we will keep on doing it."
Смешно.
Just ridiculous.
Ну ладно, мы поняли, что
Well, okay. We realized that it was out of the question.
Forces in opposition to you. So you're saying the CIA is trying to overthrow your government.
Ну, конечно, имелось в виду в данном
Of
случае.
course, they meant in that particular case that
Yes, the CIA wants me to be no. What do you think? Plains Empire is a menopausal? What? No! Can't be. There's just too many people in my empire. I'm gonna build a wonder. A wonder of the world. Should stick it right here so everyone can see it. My wonder.
the separatists, the terrorists who fought with us in the Caucasus,
Они называли.
that's who they called the opposition.
Это вот второй момент.
This is the second
Очень
point.
важный.
The third moment is a very important one. Is the moment when the US missile defense system was created.
Начало.
The beginning.
И мы долго уговаривали.
We persuaded for a long time not to do it in the United States.
Меня пригласили в
Moreover,
отец Буша.
after
Wait, I'm sorry. The creation of our missile defense system. They persuaded us not to build a missile defense system? Why would we ever listen to them? Why would we ever be like, oh yeah, we're not going to make a missile defense system because, you know, Russia said not to. That seems good. Seems like something we should do. Why? In what world would we give up defense? Also, if I garrison, do they... If I garrison, do they go away? Like, missile defense is fine except when using multi-purpose missiles next to Ruski borders. There's a fine line between the missile which defends and the one with attacks. Yeah, it depends on where you point it, but... The anti-ballistic missile treaty. Arms control. Oh, sweet. I should move that to the top so it goes on the front so people can see when I get the new subs or whatever wonderful thing just came to me. Where YouTube alerts, there we go. Overlay. There we are. Thanks for the sub, Southern Rebel. But personally, I'd prefer us to have such capabilities rather than not to. Yeah, I have a feeling this is going to be... we put something in our country. Or an ally. And they were like, that's pretty close. Alright. Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, also known as the ABM Treaty or ABMT, was an arms control treaty between the United States and the Soviet Union on the limitation of the anti-ballistic missile. Systems used in defending areas against ballistic missile-delivered nuclear weapons. It was intended to reduce pressures to build more nuclear weapons to maintain deterrence. Under the terms of the treaty, each party was limited to 2 ABM complexes, each of which was to be limited to 100 anti-ballistic missiles. Signed in 1972, it was in force for the next 30 years. In 1997, 5 years after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, 4 former Soviet republics agreed with the United States to succeed the USSR's role in the treaty. Okay. Citing risks of nuclear blackmail, the United States withdrew from the treaty in 2002, leading to its termination. So is he talking about after we left the treaty? Throughout the late 1950s and into the 1960s, the United States and the Soviet Union had been developing missile systems with the ability to shoot down incoming intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBM warheads. During this period, the U.S. considered the defense of the U.S. as part of the reducing the overall damage inflicted in a full nuclear exchange. As part of this defense, Canada and the U.S. established the North American Air Defense Command, now called North American Aerospace Defense Command. By the early 1950s, U.S. research on the Nike Zeus missile system I hope that is Nike, had developed to the point where small improvements would allow it to be used as the basis of an operational ABM system. Work started on a short-range, high-speed counterparts known as Sprint to provide defense for the ABM sites themselves. By the mid-1960s, both systems showed enough promise to start development of base selection for a limited ABM system dubbed Sentinel. Ooh, those very cool names. In 1967, the U.S. announced that Sentinel itself would be scaled down with a smaller and less expensive Safeguard. Soviet doctrine called for development of its own ABM system and returned to strategic parity with the U.S. This was achieved with the operational deployment of the A-35 ABM system and its successors, which remain operational to this day. The development of multiple independently targetable reentry vehicle MIRV systems allowed a single ICBM to deliver as many as 10 separate warheads at a time. An ABM defense system could be overwhelmed with the sheer number of warheads, upgrading it to the counter. Okay. ABM Treaty. United States proposed an anti-ballistic missile treaty at the 67 Glassboro Summit Conference. During discussions between the U.S. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara and we all know Robert McNamara from Call of Duty Zombies. That's where we all learned about him. Let's be honest here. The Soviet Union, Alexei Kosygin. McNamara argued both that ballistic missile defense could provoke an arms race and that it might provoke a first strike against the nation fielding the defense. Kosygin rejected this reasoning and were trying to minimize the number of nuclear missiles in the world. Following the proposal of the Sentinel and Safeguard decisions on American ABM systems, by 72, an agreement had been reached to limit strategic defensive systems. Each country was allowed 2 sites at which it could base a defensive system, one for the capital and one for ICBM silos. The treaty was signed in 72 by the 2 of them. Okay. Missiles limited by the treaty. Did we break it? Yes, it is Nike. Nice. Believe it or not, George isn't at home. Where could he be? Believe it or not, I'm walking around. I never thought I could trick or treat. Oh, maybe this is it. 83, Ronald Reagan announced the Strategic Defense Initiative, a research program into ballistic missile defense, which would be consistent with our obligations under the ABM Treaty. Reagan was wary of mutual deterrence with what he had recently called an evil empire and wanted to escape the traditional confines of mutually assured destruction. The project was a blow to Yuri Andropov's so-called peace offensive. Andropov said that it is time Washington stopped thinking up one option after another in search of the best way of unleashing nuclear war in the hope of winning it. To do this is not just irresponsible, it is madness. Regardless of the opposition, Reagan gave every indication that SDI would not be used as a bargaining chip and that the United States would do all in its power to build the system. The Soviets were threatened because the Americans might have been able to make a nuclear first strike possible. In the nuclear predicament, Beckman claims that one of the central goals of the Soviet diplomacy was to terminate SDI. A surprise attack from the Americans would destroy much of the Soviet ICBM's fleet, allowing SDI to defeat a ragged Soviet retaliatory response. Furthermore, if the Soviets chose to enter this new arms race, they would further cripple their economy. Soviets could not afford to ignore Reagan's new endeavor, therefore their policy at the time was to enter negotiations with the American. By 87, however, the USSR withdrew its opposition, concluding the SDI posed no threat and scientifically would never work. All we had to do was bluff them. We bluff them and they show up to the table. I don't know, I'm curious now what this is. SDI research went ahead, although it did not achieve the hoped-for result. SDI research was cut back following the end of Reagan's presidency, and in 95 was reiterated in a presidential statement that missile defense systems may be deployed, will not pose a realistic threat to strategic nuclear force. Okay. Theater missile defense negotiations. ABM treaty prohibited national missile defense, with this interpreted to allow more limited systems called theater missile defense systems. Oh, so you can just stick them like in the battlefield, 5 kilometers. After the dissolution of the USSR, it looks like we never violated the treaty. And here's Putin and Bush signing stuff. Okay, what are they signing here then? Belarus, Ukraine, Kazakhstan became regular president of the ABM treaty meetings, known as standing consultative commissions, and additional memorandum. In the United States, there was a debate on whether, after the dissolution of the USSR, the ABM treaty was still in effect. A month after the USSR's dissolution, President George Bush affirmed the ABM treaty and regarded Russia as USSR's successor. Russia also accepted the ABM treaty. Later on, President Clinton would affirm the validity of the treaty, as would President George W. Bush, before he terminated it. However, some Americans, mostly conservative Republicans, argued that the treaty was not in effect because the USSR had no successor state. This was deemed inconsistent, as Russia did indeed inherit the USSR's obligations and its territory. Former CIA Director James Woolsey argued that in order for the treaty to remain in force, both the U.S. and Russia had to accept it, and that President Clinton could not accept it without congressional approval, according to Michael G. Wait, isn't the president the only person who can say yes or no to treaties? I thought that was only presidential rules. Congress acknowledged the treaty in 96 when it passed law restricting President Clinton's ability to modify the treaty. Okay. Then we withdrew in 2001. We gave them notice. Supporters of the withdrawal argued there was necessity in order to test and build a limited national missile defense to protect the United States from nuclear blackmail by a rogue state, but the withdrawal had many foreign and domestic critics who said the construction of a missile defense system would lead to fears of a U.S. nuclear first strike. Be afraid. Be afraid that the U.S. is going to show up and fix your country. We shouldn't waste money doing that, but you should always be worried that we will. Russian response. Newly elected Russian President Vladimir Putin responded to the withdrawal by ordering a buildup of Russia's nuclear capabilities designed to counterbalance the U.S. capabilities, although he noted there was no immediate danger stemming from the U.S. withdrawal. They won't attack, but we'll build more nukes. Russia and the U.S. signed the Strategic Offensive Reductions Treaty in Moscow on May 2002. This treaty mandates cuts in deployed strategic nuclear warheads, but without actually mandating cuts to total stockpiled warheads, and without any mechanism for enforcement. Oh, good. Withdrew from the ABM. In interviews with Oliver Stone in 2017, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that in trying to persuade Russia to accept U.S. withdrawal from the treaty, both Bill Clinton and George W. had tried, without evidence, to convince him of an emergent nuclear threat from Iran. Oh. This is such a weird world we live in. It feels like you've got Iran, Russia, and China that all sort of have similar, like, desires for America to, like, be around so that they can still flex and try to be the big guy. Like, oh, look, you should vote for me because America bad. Like, but I feel like if you left them all in a room together, they would all be trying to kill each other. Like, I feel like on some level, Iran, China, and Russia all hate each other, but that they also don't like us either. And that just sort of makes them all on, like, the same side of the world, kind of. Some people seem to really not like Reagan for some reason. Yeah, some reason. Thanks for trying, everyone. I believe the official name of the nation state. Congress says yes or no. President can veto. I thought specifically on treaties, it was like the president's presidential treaty powers. The United States Constitution provides that the president shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. Okay. So he makes the treaties, but then the Senate has to agree on it, would be what that says to me in Article 2, Section 2. Honestly, that's something non-Americans ponder. Will America care enough to get involved if we fuck ourselves up enough? Yeah, maybe not. Thank you, Veritex, for quoting Section 2, Part 2 for me. Oh no, I'm under attack. Good thing I have, like, near infinite resources.
Was invited by Bush Jr.'s father, Bush Sr., to visit his place on the ocean. I had a very serious conversation with President Bush and his team. I proposed that the United States, Russia, and Europe jointly create a missile defense system that, we believe, if created unilaterally, threatens our security, despite the fact that the United States officially said that it was being created against missile threats from Iran. That was the justification for the deployment of the missile defense system. I suggested working together, Russia, the United States, and Europe. They said it was very interesting. They asked me, "Are you serious?" I said, "Absolutely."
Let me ask, what year was this?
I don't remember. It is easy to find out on the internet when I was in the USA at the invitation of Bush Sr. It is even easier to learn from someone I'm going to tell you about. I was told it was very interesting. I said, just imagine if we could tackle such a global strategic security challenge together. The world will change. We'll probably have disputes, probably economic and even political ones, but we could drastically change the situation in the world. He says yes, and asks, "Are you serious?" I said, "Of course. We need to think about it," I'm told. I said, "Go ahead, please." Then Secretary of Defense Gates, former director of CIA, and Secretary of State Rice came in here, in this cabinet, right here at this table.
Whoa, gross. I don't know where they did that. That's
the Russian
inappropriate,
Mr.
Putin.
On that side. They said to me, "Yes, we have thought about it. We agree." I said, "Thank God, great, but with some exceptions."
So twice you've described U.S. presidents making decisions and then being undercut by their agency heads. So it sounds like you're describing a system that's not run by the people who are elected, in your telling.
That's right. That's right.
Yes,
In the
right.
end, they
You
just told
you
us to
get
get
me,
lost.
buddy.
I'm not going to tell you the details because I think it's incorrect. After all, it was confidential conversation. But our proposal was declined. That's a fact. It was right then when I said, Look, but then we will be forced to take countermeasures. We will create such strike systems that will certainly overcome missile defense systems. The answer was, we are not doing this against you, and you do what you want, assuming that it is not against us, not against the United States. I said, okay. Very well. That's the way it went. And we created hypersonic systems with intercontinental range.
Sure you
continue
did,
to
buddy.
develop them. We are now ahead of everyone, the United States and the other countries, in terms of the development of hypersonic strike systems, and we are improving them every day.
Sure, buddy.
But it wasn't us. We proposed to go the other way, and we were pushed back. Now, about NATO's expansion to the east. Well, we were promised no NATO to the east, not an inch to the east, as we were told. And then what? They said, well, it's not enshrined on paper, so we'll expand. So there were 5 waves of expansion, the Baltic states, the whole of Eastern Europe, and so on. And now I come to the main thing. They have come to the Ukraine, ultimately.
They have
In
come to the
2008,
Ukraine.
at the summit in Bucharest, they declared that the doors for Ukraine and Georgia to join NATO were open. Now about how decisions are made there. Germany, France seem to be against it, as well as some other European countries. But then, as it turned out later, President Bush, and he's such a tough guy, a tough politician, as a
Look at the Tuck's face. Bush was a tough guy? What? What did you say? I knew it, he says. I knew Bush was a tough guy.
I was told later, he exerted pressure on us and we had to agree. It's ridiculous. It's like kindergarten. Where are the guarantees? What kindergarten is this? What kind of people are these? Who are they? You see, they were pressed, they agreed.
Who
And
are
then they say, Ukraine won't be in the NATO, you know? I say, I don't know. I know you agreed in 2008. Why won't you agree in the future?
Because we don't
they
owe you
pressed us
anything.
then. I say, why won't they press you tomorrow? And you'll agree again. Well, it's nonsensical. Who's there to talk to? I just don't understand. We're ready to talk. But with whom?
What do you mean
Where
with
are the
whom?
guarantees? None. So they started to develop the territory of Ukraine. Whatever is there, I have told you the background, how this territory developed, what kind of relations there were with Russia. Every second or third person there has always had some ties with Russia. And during the elections in already independent, sovereign Ukraine, which gained its independence as a result of the Declaration of Independence. And by the way, it says that Ukraine is a neutral state, and in 2008, suddenly the doors or gates to NATO were open to it. Oh, come on. This is
come
not how
on.
we agreed.
Oh, come
Now,
on.
all the presidents
Come on,
that
buddy.
have come to power in Ukraine, they relied on electorate with a good attitude to Russia in one way or the other. This is the southeast of Ukraine. This is a large number of people. And it was very difficult to dissuade this electorate, which had a positive attitude towards Russia. Viktor Yanukovych came to power, and how? The first time he won after President Kuchma, they organized a third round, which is not provided for in the constitution of Ukraine. This is a coup d'etat. Just imagine, someone in the United States wouldn't like the outcome.
In 2014.
Before that.
Niet.
No, this was before that. After President Kuchma, Viktor Yanukovych won the elections.
To victory,
However,
my man.
his opponents did not recognize that victory. The US supported the opposition, and the third round was scheduled. What is this? This is a coup. The US supported it, and the winner of the third round came to power. Imagine if in the US something was not to someone's liking, and the third round of election, which the US Constitution does not provide for, was organized. Nonetheless, it was done in Ukraine. Okay, Viktor Yushchenko, who was considered a pro-Western politician, came to power.
Viktor Yushchenko.
Fine, we have built relations with him as well. He came to Moscow with visits. We visited Kiev. I visited too. We met in an informal setting. If he's pro-Western, so be it. It's fine. Let people do their job. The situation should have developed inside the independent Ukraine itself. As a result of Kuchma's leadership, things got worse and Viktor Yanukovych came to power after all. Maybe he wasn't the best president and politician, I don't know. I don't want to give assessments. However, the issue of the association with the EU came up. We have always been lenient to this, suit yourself. But when we read through the Treaty of Association, it turned out to be a problem for us, since we had a free trade zone and open
Treaty of
customs borders with
Association was a
Ukraine,
problem.
which under this association
I
had
don't
to
like-
open
I
its
don't like that
borders for
term.
Europe, which would have led to flooding of our market.
И потоком все на наш рынок.
We said, no, this is not going to work. We shall close our borders with Ukraine then. The customs borders, that is.
Начал считать.
Yanukovych started to calculate how much Ukraine was going to gain,
Yanukovych?
how much to lose, and said to his European partners, I need more time to think before signing. The moment he said that, the opposition began to take destructive steps, which were supported by the
Destructive
West.
steps, got it.
It all came down to Maidan and a coup in Ukraine.
Ah, the Maidan coup.
So he did more trade with Russia.
There's the Maidan coup now. We finally made it. We finally made it to things that people talk about when they're in debates about the whole Ukraine everything. We're in Maidan. Tucker's like, I knew I shouldn't have eaten that Russian burrito before sitting down and talk. This year the world may know. We all know he has no mic up on his
Than with the
butt. Little butt mic.
Ukraine did.
Ну, конечно. Ну, конечно, конечно.
Of course. It's not even the matter of trade volume, although for the most part it is. It is the matter of cooperation ties, which the entire
Donald
Ukrainian
Kuhn.
economy was based on. The cooperation ties between the enterprises were very close since the times of the Soviet Union. One enterprise there used to produce components to be assembled both in Russia and Ukraine and vice versa. They used to be very close ties.
Нам из Соединенных Штатов
A coup d'etat was committed, although
coup
I shall
d'etat.
not delve into details now, as I find doing it inappropriate, the US told us.
позицию
Calm Yanukovych down, and we will calm the opposition.
по пути
Let the situation unfold in the scenario of a political settlement. We said, all right, agreed, let's do it this way. As the Americans requested, Yanukovych did use neither the armed forces nor the police, yet the armed opposition committed
Oh, wait,
a
no,
coup
no.
in Kyiv.
Stop.
провела госперевод.
What is that supposed to mean?
Как это понимать?
Who do you think you are?
Вы кто такие?
I wanted to ask the then US leadership.
With the backing of whom?
Who? With the backing of
With
who?
the backing of CIA, of course.
Которые, как я понимаю,
Oh,
organization you-
CIA! CIA is coming for me. We're gonna add the Byzantines to the other team. And we're gonna go up to a ludicrous map. I want this thing absolutely massive. And let's do coastal this time. And up the population. Let's do 500s. I'll make them that color. Alrighty. Lock teams. Team goes together. Okay. Standard. Okay, that makes sense. No treaties. We don't need that. Conquest. Win by destroying all enemies in military conquest. Last man standing. No allied victory. Team members must ultimately turn. Ooh, let's do... To destroy all enemies in military control all relics or build a wonder. Oh, you just need to build a wonder and you win? What?
You wanted to join back in the day, as I understand.
Хотя это серьезно.
We should thank God they didn't let you in. Although, it
Wait.
is
They didn't let Tucker in?
be very close ties.
Хотя нам из Соединенных Штатов
A coup d'etat was committed, although I shall not delve into details now, as I find doing it inappropriate, the US told us.
позицию
Calm Yanukovych down, and we will calm the opposition. Let the situation unfold in the scenario of a
that makes
political
sense.
settlement. We said, all right, agreed, let's do it this way. As the Americans requested, Yanukovych did use neither the armed forces nor the police, yet the armed opposition committed a coup in Kiev.
Ah, the Kievan
What is that
coup.
supposed to mean?
Как это понимать?
Who do you think you are?
Вы кто такие?
I wanted to ask the then US leadership.
With the backing of whom?
При поддержке ЦРУ, конечно.
For the backing of
Pripyatnyoshki.
CIA, of course.
Которые, как я понимаю,
The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand.
хотя это серьезно.
We should thank God they didn't let you in. Although,
Oh, the CIA. Tucker wanted to join the CIA? Is that true? Did Tucker Carlson want to join the CIA? Did Tucker Carlson... After college, Carlson tried to join the Central Intelligence Agency, but his application was denied, after which he decided to pursue a career in journalism, with the encouragement of his father, who advised him that they'll take anybody. What? Imagine! Imagine if Tuck was your CIA operative. Oh my goodness. That would be hilarious. It's a good thing they didn't let you in, otherwise I'd have hurt your pretty face, Tucker. Oh my goodness, that's hilarious.
it is a serious organization. I understand. My former vis-a-vis, in the sense that I served... in the first named
Rejection letter
record
didn't
of Soviet
happen, is
Union's
what the
intelligence
generation
service.
used to say.
They have always been our opponents. A job is a job.
Но технически они все сделали правильно.
Technically, they did everything right. They achieved their goal of changing the government. However, from political standpoint, it was a colossal mistake.
Have a good one, Pop.
Surely it was political leadership's miscalculation. They should have seen what it would evolve into.
Итак, в 2000
So, in 2008, the doors of NATO were open
Oh,
for
this map is
Ukraine. In
huge.
2014, there was a coup. They started persecuting those who did not accept the coup, and it was indeed a coup. They created the threat to Crimea, which we had to take under our protection. They launched the war in Donbass in 2014.
I don't know why it's so funny, but whenever someone says, like, it was a steak, it was indeed a steak. Like, why do they double say things? It's just the huntable animal in this
And
world.
artillery against civilians. This is when it all started. There's a video of aircraft attacking Donetsk from above. They launched a large-scale military operation, then another one. When they failed, they started to prepare the next one. All this against the background of military development of this territory and opening of NATO's doors. How could we not
Putin getting
express
personal,
concern
yeah.
over what was happening? From our side, this would have been a culpable negligence. That's what it would have been.
Вот что это было бы такое.
It's more terrifying of, like,
It's just that the US
how
political
Putin knows
leadership
that, I
pushed us
think.
to the line we could not cross, because doing so
cannot
could
cross
have
this
ruined
line.
Russia itself.
Потому что это разрушило саму Россию. И потом мы не могли бросить наших единоверцев.
Besides, we could not leave our brothers in faith, in fact, a part of Russian people, in the face of this war
под
machine.
эту военную машину.
What was the, but that was 8 years before the current conflict started. So what was the trigger for you? What was the moment where you decided you had to do this?
Ну, спровоцировал конфликт изначально.
Initially, it was the coup in Ukraine that provoked the conflict. By the way, back then the representatives of 3 European countries, Germany, Poland, and France, arrived. They were the guarantors of the signed agreement between the government of Yanukovych and the opposition. They signed it as guarantors.
Несмотря на это, оппозиция
Despite that, the opposition committed a coup, and all these countries pretended that they didn't remember that they were guarantors.
Yeah, we don't remember. They all pretend not to remember, but I remember. If only Carlson joined the CIA, he could have done so many tuck jobs. Oh,
tours of the peaceful
tucking
settlement.
with the
Никто не
cuck,
вспоминает.
cucking with the
They
tuck.
just threw it in the stove right away, and nobody recalls that.
Этот договор между
I don't know if the US know anything about the agreement between the opposition and the authorities
вернуть
and its three guarantors who, instead of bringing this whole situation back in the political field,
хотя смысла в
supported
этом
the
было
coup.
не было никакого.
Although it was meaningless, believe me.
Янукович совсем согласился.
Because President Yanukovych agreed to all conditions, he was
Yeah,
ready to hold an
Yanukovych.
early election which he had no chance of winning, frankly speaking.
Зачем, Господи,
Everyone knew that. Then why the coup? Why the victims? Why threatening Crimea? Why launching an operation in
Yeah,
Donbass?
why that?
This I do not understand. That is exactly what the miscalculation is. CIA did its job to complete the coup.
один из замов госсекретаря.
I think one of the deputy secretaries of state said that it cost a large sum of money, almost 5 billion.
Зачем?
But the political mistake was colossal.
На самом деле то же самое.
Why would they
Was it?
have to do that? All this could have been done legally, without victims, without military action, without losing Crimea.
Пальцем не пиши.
We would have never considered to
this
even
guy
lift
come
a
from?
finger if it hadn't been for the bloody developments on Maidan.
Потому что мы soгласились.
If it wasn't for
Because we agreed with
Maidan,
the fact that after
they
the
wouldn't
collapse
have
of the
done it.
Soviet Union, our borders should be along the borders of former Union's republics. We agreed to that.
Расширение НАТО.
But we never agreed to NATO's expansion, and moreover, we never agreed that Ukraine would be in NATO.
Базы НАТО. Без всяких разговоров с нами.
We did
Базы
not agree
НАТО.
to NATO bases there without any discussion with us. For decades, we kept asking, don't do this, don't do that.
В последних событиях. Ну, во-первых,
And what triggered the latest events?
руководство Украины заявило,
Firstly, the current Ukrainian leadership declared that it would not implement the Minsk agreements, which had been signed, as you know, after the events of 2014 in
so
Minsk,
Minsk.
where the plan of peaceful settlement in Donbass was set forth.
нет, руководство
But no, the current Ukrainian leadership, foreign minister, all other officials, and then president himself said that they don't like anything about the Minsk agreements.
иными словами, исполнять не собираются.
In other words, they were not going to implement it.
Прямо сказали, что подписывали уже
A year or a year and a half ago, former leaders of Germany and France said openly to the whole world
это соглашение Минска.
that they indeed signed the Minsk agreements, but they
Okay.
never intended to implement them.
Oh.
Simply led us by the nose.
Was there anyone for you to talk to? Did you call a U.S. President, Secretary of State, and say, if you keep
I called my mother, Tucker. The Ukraine!
militarizing Ukraine with NATO forces, this is going to get. This is going to be a. We're going to act.
Oh! Look at that. Look at that. Tuck getting cucked right there.
Say, if you keep militarizing Ukraine with NATO forces, this is going to get.
I need to not say bloody.
This is going to be a.
Look at that face. Make it bigger.
We're going to act.
Мы постоянно об этом
He
говорим.
looks like a thumb.
Мы постоянно об этом говорим. Мы обращались к
We talked about this all the time.
европейским странам.
We addressed the United States and European countries' leadership to stop these developments immediately, to implement the Minsk agreements.
Откровенно говоря,
Frankly speaking, I didn't know how we were going to do this, but I was ready to implement them.
сложные для Украины.
These agreements were complicated for Ukraine. They included lots of elements of those Donbass territories' independence. That's true. However, I was absolutely confident, and I'm saying this to you now. I honestly believe that if we manage to convince the residents of Donbass,
He
and
was
we
a
had
fox
to work
ass.
hard to
Yeah.
convince them to return to the Ukrainian statehood.
Called my
Then
babushka.
gradually the
She
wounds would
said-
start to heal.
Постепенно
I called babushka, and babushka said to me, "Puti, my baby, I raised you to run the best country in the world and bring back my USSR, not to be a mama's cry boy. Now get out there and you take back Ukraine." that was what Mama Putin said. Babushka
When
Putin.
this part of territory reintegrated itself into common social environment, when the pensions and social benefits were paid again, all the pieces would gradually fall into place.
Falling into place, yes.
Все постепенно
No, nobody wanted that. Everybody wanted to resolve the issue by military force only.
с помощью
But we could not let that happen. And the situation got to the point when the Ukrainian side announced, no, we will not do anything. They also started preparing for military action.
войну начали они.
It was they who started the war in 2014. Our goal is to stop this
Мы не
war.
начинали.
And we did not start this war in 2022.
I didn't start this war.
This is an attempt to stop it.
Do you think you've
But I will
stopped
stop
it now? I mean, have you achieved your aims?
No, we haven't achieved our aims yet, because one of them is denazification. This means the
Ah,
prohibition
one of the
of
things is
all kinds of
denazification.
neo-Nazi movements. This is one of the problems that we discussed during the negotiation process, which ended in Istanbul early this year.
Который завершился в Стамбуле в прошлом году в начале. Но
And it was not
No,
our
no.
initiative, because we were told by the Europeans, in particular, that it was necessary to create conditions for the final signing of the
Wood
documents.
for that.
My counterparts in France and Germany said,
Германия говорит, ну как ты себе представляешь, как они будут подписывать?
how can you imagine them signing a treaty with a gun to their heads?
Suffer
troops should-
with me? What is this? Hold on, I'm gonna turn off the audio to you, just in case. It's that's the exact song I was singing, kidda. HomestarRunner.com does the same thing with one of their Halloween episodes. Homestar Runner knocks at the door, and when it opens, he's like, "Believe it or not, I'm walking around. I never thought I could twick or tweet." Yeah, same joke, different show. Way ahead of ya. Way ahead of ya.
Be pulled back from Kiev. I said, all right. We withdrew the troops from Kiev.
То, извините, от Киева. Как
As soon as we pulled back
Seems
our
like a better
troops from
version.
Kiev, our Ukrainian
Believe it
negotiators
or not,
immediately
George
threw
isn't
all our
at home.
agreements reached in Istanbul into the bin
договоренности достигнуты в Стамбуле.
and got prepared for a long-standing armed confrontation with the help of the United States and its satellites in Europe.
Our satellites. We have
That is how the
satellites?
situation has developed. And that is how it looks now.
Да.
But what is, pardon my ignorance, what is denazification? What would that mean? What is,
Да, вот я как раз хочу сейчас об этом
What do you mean, what does that mean? It means Nazis, and then we make no Nazis.
Денацификация.
That is what I want to talk about right now. It is a very important issue. Denazification.
Искать, как говорят некоторые
After gaining independence, Ukraine began to search, as some Western analysts say, its identity.
во главу угла этой идентичности.
And it came up with nothing better than to build this identity upon some false heroes who collaborated with
False
Hitler.
heroes.
Сотрудничали с Гитлером. Я уже говорил, что
I have already said that in the early 19th century, when the theorists of independence and sovereignty of Ukraine appeared, they assumed that
Wait, if Putin is fighting Nazis, does that make him Antifa? Why do you think all of the leftists are tankies? Why do you think they all love Russia and China? Because he's the ultimate Antifa.
an independent Ukraine should have very good relations with Russia.
Но в силу исторического развития
But due to the historical development, those territories were part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Poland, where Ukrainians were persecuted and treated quite brutally as well as were subject to cruel behavior.
идентичность вели себя очень жестоко, это все осталось в памяти.
There were also attempts to destroy their identity.
The ultimate
Когда
anti-fascist.
началась Вторая мировая война, часть
It takes a real authoritarian to really tamp down on fascism. background looks cold.
этой
It looks
All this
fake.
remained in the memory
The whole
of
background looks like a set that was like built for like your local community show. Like that's just, it's exactly what it looks like in my brain.
the people.
край-
When World War II broke out, part of this extremely nationalist elite collaborated with Hitler, believing that he would bring them freedom.
она начала сотрудничать с Гитлером, полагая, что
The German troops, even the SS troops, made Hitler's collaborators
Thought he
do
was in
the
his palace in
dirtiest
the
work
Kremlin.
of exterminating the Polish and Jewish
I'm pretty sure the Kremlin is just a giant warehouse, and then inside everything is just paper mache. That's my fisherman.
population.
грязную работу
Hence this brutal massacre of the Polish and Jewish population, as well as the Russian population too.
специалистам, которые с Гитлером сотрудничали. Вот отсюда вот эта жестокая резня.
This was led by the persons who are well known, Bandera, Shukevich. It was those people who were made national
Bandera?
heroes. That is the
Antonio
problem.
Bandera?
And we are constantly told that nationalism and neo-Nazism exist in other countries as well.
Yeah, the translator has his own version of the documents that he got handed earlier. Looks like an ice cream cone playing Tetris.
Well, yes, they are seedlings, but we uproot them,
Нам все время
and
говорят,
other countries fight against them.
национализм,
But Ukraine is not the case. These people have been made into national heroes in Ukraine. Monuments to those people have been erected. They are displayed on flags. Their names are shouted by crowds that walk with torches, as it was in Nazi Germany.
Walk with torches. He's talking about Charlottesville. He knew. He knew. I need more people to whack all of that down. All that over there. Lumberjack.
они на флагах, они их имена кричат.
These were people who exterminated Poles, Jews, and Russians.
Это люди, которые уничтожали поляков, евреев и русских. Надо
It is necessary to stop this practice and prevent the dissemination of this concept.
нация, она выросла.
I say that Ukrainians are part of the one Russian
Man, it
people.
wasn't a
They say,
luau.
no, we are a separate
Нет, мы
people.
отдельный народ. Ладно, хорошо,
Okay,
если
fine.
кто-то считает себя отдельным
If they
народом,
consider themselves a separate people, they have the right to do so, but not on the basis of Nazism.
But they
the
will
Nazi
die
ideology.
Would you
separately
be
then.
satisfied with the territory that you have now?
Нет, закончим. Вы же задали вопрос по неонацизму и денацификации
I will finish answering the question.
Украины.
You just asked a question about neo-Nazism and denazification.
Замалчивается назад.
Look,
That's not what I asked. I asked you, would you be happy to stop with the land you have now? He can't say yes to that, of course, because if he says yes, then everyone will be like, oh, hey, look, Putin, take peace. You told Tucker Carlson you would do peace. Come do peace now. But he can't say that, because if he says that, then it'll give away that he doesn't need anything anymore. But that's not his current position. How's the floor? There's like 3 different carpets there.
the president of Ukraine
wacky.
visited Canada. The story is well known, but being silenced in the Western countries.
Спикер парламента.
The Canadian Parliament
Which is it?
introduced a man
Is it a well-known story, or is it being silenced? Which is it? Can't be both. This is the weirdest farmland I've got. Do one more over here. Push three.
man who, as the Speaker of the Parliament said,
Владимир II
fought against the Russians during the World War II. Well, who fought against the Russians during the World War II?
выяснил, что это
Hitler and his accomplices.
The Germans.
It turned out that this man served in the SS troops. He personally killed Russians, Poles, and Jews. The SS troops consisted of Ukrainian
Wait, did he
nationalists
personally kill
who
Jews
did
or just
infantry
Russians?
work.
We don't know that, do we?
The president of Ukraine stood
wanna
up
make-
with the
I just wanna
entire
make
Parliament
Putin
of
worse, that's all.
Canada and applauded this man. How can this be imagined? The president of Ukraine himself, by the way, is a Jew by nationality.
Really, my question is, what do you do about it? I mean, Hitler's been dead for 80 years. Nazi Germany no longer exists. And so, true. And so, I think what you're saying is you want to extinguish or at least control Ukrainian nationalism. But how? How do you do that?
How?
Вот послушайте меня.
Same way we did 30 years ago. We keep killing the Nazis and we don't stop until they die. What is he gonna say here? Look at that face. Look at that face. This is the... Let me tell you what I'm gonna do about the Jews, Tucker. Let me tell you, Tucker. I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. I mean the Nazis. I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do about the Nazis in Ukraine. You just wait. And I'm gonna tell you so good, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I should bring that idea to get rid of Nazis in America too. And the Canada Nazis. Like what is the all four pointer?
Очень тонкий.
Listen to me. Your question is very subtle, and I can tell you what I think. Do not take offense.
Of course.
Казалось бы, тонкий.
I need that as a thing.
Послушайте
Hold
меня.
on.
Ваш вопрос очень
Wait, hold on.
тонкий.
Listen to me. Your question is very subtle, and I can tell you what I think. Do not take offense.
Don't take offense.
Of course.
Он, казалось бы, тонкий. Он очень противный, этот вопрос.
You can't offend me because I don't care what anyone thinks. Like, what is the concern here, Pootie?
This question appears to be subtle. It is quite pesky.
Значит,
You say Hitler has been dead for so many years,
люди, которые
80 years.
уничтожали
But his
евреев,
example
русских,
lives on.
поляков, живы.
People who exterminated Jews,
Президент,
Russians, and
действующий
Poles are
президент
alive.
сегодняшней Украины
And the
аплодирует
president,
ему
the
в
current
канадском
president of
парламенте,
today's Ukraine,
аплодирует
applauds him
стоя.
in the Canadian parliament, gives a standing ovation.
Целиком выкручен.
Can
Oh,
we
nice,
say
we
that
got-
we
we
have
got footage of it.
completely uprooted this ideology if what we see is happening today? That is what denazification is in our understanding.
That guy's so
We
old.
have to get rid of those people who maintain this concept and support this practice and try to preserve it. That is what denazification is. That is what we mean.
Right. My question was a little more specific. It was, of course, not a defense of Nazis, neo or otherwise. It was a practical question. You don't control the entire country. You don't control Kiev. You don't seem like you want to. So how do you eliminate a culture or an ideology or feelings or a view of history in a country that you don't control? What do you do about that?
А вы знаете,
I don't have any idea, really. We're just fighting till I get my land back. I mean, stop with Nazis. Oh my gosh. My question is really just practicality. Like how, you know, because I also wish to stop the Nazis. So how do you do that? Control the country. We control our country, and we still have neo-Nazis. You got to break the people, remove their pesky freedoms.
как вам не покажется странным, в ходе переговоров...
Uh-oh, Vlad Dracul's in the castlage.
As strange as it may seem to you, during the negotiations in Istanbul, we did agree that we have it all in writing. Neo-Nazism would not be cultivated in Ukraine, including that it would be prohibited at the legislative level.
Prohibited
Mr.
at a
Carlson, we
legislative
agreed on
level.
that. This, it turns out, can be done during the negotiation process. And there's nothing humiliating for Ukraine as a modern civilized state. Is any state allowed to promote Nazism? It is
I
not,
mean,
is it?
kinda.
That is it.
It's not encouraged, but like it
Will
is.
there be talks, and why haven't there
permit,
been
like-
talks?
the idea of Nazism is permitted in a free country. We all disagree with it, I hope, in this chat and on this stream. But, like, the idea can still exist. It doesn't just stop existing because people are like, I don't want to talk about Nazis. It's not how the world works. Okay, let's do right here. Free speech protects all speech. It is true. And we just have to have better rhetoric than neo-Nazis. And speaking is probably the only... Actually, I won't say that. I'll just say speaking is someone who has been around neo-Nazis. They're not exactly the brightest people in the world. They're not exactly philosophers and geniuses. So if you find yourself losing rhetorically to a neo-Nazi, I think you've got bigger problems with your life.
About resolving the conflict in Ukraine, peace talks.
Let's put 2 more on the rocks.
Они дошли до очень высокой стадии согласования позиций.
They have been. They reached a very high stage of coordination of positions in a complex process, but still they were almost finalized. But after we withdrew our troops from Kiev, as I have already said, the other side threw away all these agreements and obeyed the instructions of Western countries, European countries, and the United States to fight Russia to the bitter end. Moreover, the president of Ukraine has legislated a ban on negotiating with Russia. He signed a decree forbidding everyone to negotiate with Russia.
Did he do
But
that?
how are we going to negotiate if he forbade himself and everyone to do this?
We cannot talk.
We know that he is putting forward some ideas about the settlement, but in order to agree on something, we need to have a dialogue. Is that not right?
Well, but you wouldn't be speaking to the Ukrainian president, you'd be speaking to the American president. When was the last time you spoke to Joe Biden?
I cannot remember when I...
Yeah, well, neither can Joe. Don't worry. Oh. The interpreter pronounced Kiev correctly. I hate when people call it Kiev. Yeah. You don't know which is the correct pronunciation. I like Kiev. Like, it's like you're going down a section of a roller coaster, like Kiev. Picked the best photo. Yeah. When was the last time you talked to Biden?
I talked to him. I do not remember. We can look it up.
You don't remember?
No.
Wow, that really tickled the tuck. You don't remember? Why did he shout it? Why did he say it like that? What was the purpose? You don't remember? Ha! You don't remember?
Why? Do I have to remember everything? I have my own things to do. We have domestic political affairs.
Well, he's funding the war that you're fighting, so I would think that would be memorable.
Ну да, он финансирует.
Oh, yes, he funds, but I talked to him before the special military operation, of course. And I said to him then, by the way, I will not go into details, I never do, but I said to him then, I believe that you are making a huge mistake of historic proportions by supporting everything that is happening there, in Ukraine, by pushing Russia away. I told him repeatedly, by the way. I think that would be correct if I stop here.
What did he say?
Ask him, please.
Realize acting naturally and yells, yeah. I'm going to stop here because I won't divulge everything we talk to each other.
It is easier for you. You are a citizen of the United States. Go and ask him. It is not appropriate for me to comment on our conversation.
But you haven't spoken to him since before February of 2022.
Нет.
Нет.
Но у нас есть.
No, we haven't spoken. Certain contacts are being maintained, though.
The guy that's doing the voiceover sounds like one of the guys that does the voiceover for Singles Inferno. He just has a very, very similar sounding voice. I don't know what it is about it. I can kind of hear that guy. I'm gonna put this right here.
Speaking of which, do you remember what I told you about my proposal to work together on a missile defense system?
Yes.
Да. Вот, можно спросить у всех. Они
You can ask all of them. All of them are safe and sound, thank God.
They're all
The former
safe.
president, Condoleezza, is safe and sound, and I think Mr. Gates and the current director of the intelligence agency, Mr. Burns, the then ambassador to Russia, in my opinion, are very
Yes.
successful ambassador. They were all witnesses to these conversations. Ask them. Same here. If you are interested in what Mr. President Biden responded to me, ask him. At any rate, I talked to him about it.
I'm definitely interested, but from the outside, it seems like this could devolve or evolve into something that brings the entire world into conflict and could initiate a nuclear launch. And so why don't you just call Biden and say, let's work this out?
А чего решить?
I assure you, I would.
What's
But,
there to work out?
I must
It's
drink
very
his
simple.
blood.
I repeat,
Есть контакты по линии там различных.
we have contacts through various agencies.
Я вам скажу, что мы говорим на эту тему.
I will tell you what we are saying on this matter and what we are conveying to the US leadership. If you really want to stop fighting, you need to stop supplying weapons. It will be over within a few weeks. That's it.
Oh,
And then we can agree.
I don't think he knows how that comes across. I'm telling him, you know, if he stops funding Ukraine, the war will end very quickly. Oh, will it now? It seems very, yeah, I'm losing because you're funding. This fight goes on because they have your money. Not a great start to his argument, but if you let us win, we'll win. Exactly. And this pesky thing called you guys keep getting into the way.
Some terms. Before you do that, stop. What's easier? Why would I call him? What should I talk to him about? Or beg him for what?
And what
Вы
messages do you
собираетесь
get back?
поставить такое-то оружие на Украину.
You're going to deliver such and such weapons to Ukraine? Oh, I'm afraid, please don't. What is there to talk about?
Do you think NATO is worried about this becoming a global war or a nuclear conflict?
At least that's what they're talking about. And they're trying to intimidate their own population with an imaginary Russian threat. This is an obvious fact. And thinking people, not Philistines, but thinking people, analysts, those who are engaged in real politics, just smart people understand
You know,
perfectly well
normal
that this
people.
is a fake. They're trying to fuel the Russian threat.
The threat I think you're referring to is a Russian invasion of Poland, Latvia, expansionist behavior. Can you imagine a scenario where you sent Russian troops to Poland?
When the troops roll into Warsaw,
Only in
they'll
one case,
find
if
you
Poland
at
attacks
the
Russia.
front.
Why? Because we have no
Singing
interest in
into-
Poland,
Sorry, that's
Latvia, or anywhere else.
If anybody doesn't know that song, that's Harvey Danger has a song, and that is one of the choruses. Absolutely love that song.
Why would we do that? We simply don't have any interest. It's just threat mongering.
Well, the argument, I know you know this, is that, well, he invaded Ukraine. He has territorial aims across the continent, and you're saying unequivocally you don't.
Абсолютно, это абсолютно.
What? Hold on a second. Can we go back?
Interest. It's just threat mongering.
Well, the argument, I know you know this, is that, well, he invaded Ukraine. He has territorial aims across the continent. And
So they haven't had any delays or silence this entire thing. So on one hand, they could be showing the time that he's waiting for the translated message to come across. So it could actually be showing the translation time there. But the fact that they did it here is so specific.
and you're saying unequivocally you don't.
Абсолютно, это абсолютно исключено.
It is absolutely out of the question. You just don't have to be any kind of analyst. It goes against common sense to get involved in some kind of a global war.
Глобальная война.
Of course it does. Of course it does, buddy.
Поставить на...
I just want the old
And a global war
USSR.
will bring all humanity to the brink of destruction. It's obvious.
Есть, конечно, средства.
There are certainly means of deterrence. They have been scaring everyone with us all along. Tomorrow, Russia will use tactical nuclear weapons.
She's pulling a JBP. I don't think it's a JBP. You know, Tucker, that's a really good question. When I think about the young men in America who are being told day in and day out how evil they are, my heart weeps for them, Tucker. It really does. There's the JBP.
Tomorrow, Russia
Answer.
will use that. No, the day after tomorrow. So what?
Выбить из налогоплательщиков.
In order to extort additional money from U.S. taxpayers and European taxpayers
Not a
in the
bad JVP,
confrontation
thank
with
you.
Russia in the Ukrainian theater of war. The goal is to
Focus
weaken
on
Russia as much as possible.
Horses.
One of our senior United States senators from the state of New York, Chuck Schumer, said yesterday
Don't bring in
that we
Chucky!
have to
No!
continue to fund the Ukrainian effort, or U.S. soldiers, citizens could wind up fighting there. How do you assess that?
Это провокация.
This is a provocation, and a cheap provocation at that.
Cheap provocation.
I do not understand why American soldiers should fight in Ukraine. There are mercenaries from the United States there. The bigger number of mercenaries comes from Poland, with mercenaries from the United States in second place, and mercenaries from Georgia in third place.
Безусловно.
Well, if somebody has the desire to send regular troops, that would certainly bring humanity to the brink of very serious global conflict.
They would be serious, wouldn't
obvious.
it, Pooty?
Do the United States need this? What for?
Национальной территории. У вас нечем заниматься.
Thousands of miles away from your national territory.
Границы полны. Проблемы
Don't you have anything better to do?
с
You have issues on the border, issues with migration, issues with the national debt. More than $33 trillion. You have nothing.
That's not how the national debt works, Putin. It's not an issue. There's a question about what we should spend money on and what's worth the investment, but don't. Now Putin's bringing up the debt. What is he? I guess he is Austrian. He was talking about hanging out with Austrians earlier, so I guess that would make some amount of sense now that I think about it.
Thing better to do, so you should fight in Ukraine?
Понимая ситуацию, которая складывается.
Wouldn't it be better to negotiate with Russia? Make an agreement, already understanding the situation that is developing today, realizing that Russia will fight for its interests to the end,
Oh,
and
What a-
realizing this,
what a,
actually return to
like,
common
dark
sense,
thing to
start
say.
respecting
why would you come fight in Ukraine? We will fight forever. Like, Gross, dude. Evil. Don't do that. Why you do that? We'll fight forever. Maybe if you were right, you would win, but you're not right, and you're not winning. So much debt. IJP, don't get on this debt train. It's not how any of it works. Don't think of it like your credit cards. That's not how US debt works.
Our country and its interests and look for certain solutions. It seems to me that this is much smarter and more rational.
Who blew up Nord Stream?
Who did it?
You for sure.
I was busy that day. Nate, do you have I did not blow up Nord Stream. Thank you, though.
У вас лично, может быть, есть алиби, у вас лично.
Oh, it's
You
лично.
personally may have an alibi, but the CIA has no such alibi.
Do you have evidence that NATO or the CIA did it?
IJP, that's a hair trigger for me. You just say so much debt. I just got done the other day with a freaking essay back and forth with family about how debt and spending works. You got me. It would be funnier though if it was Tucker who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Знаете,
You know, I won't get into details, but people always
Dead
say
Lord of
in
the
such
Rings.
cases,
You got me, Jimmy.
look for someone who is interested. But in this case, we should not only look for someone who is interested, but also for someone who has capabilities. Because there may be many people interested, but not all of them are capable of sinking to the bottom of the Baltic Sea and carrying out this explosion. These two components should be connected. Who is interested and who is capable of doing it.
But I'm confused. I mean, that's the biggest act of industrial terrorism ever, and it's the largest emission of CO2 in history. Okay, so if you had evidence, and presumably given your security services, your intel services, you would, that NATO, the US, CIA, the West, did this, why wouldn't you present it and win a propaganda victory?
He's not so simple.
In the war of propaganda, it is very difficult to defeat the United States, because the United States controls all the world's media and many European
Woo! We're
ultimate
number one.
beneficiary of the biggest
We're
European
number
media
one.
are American financial institutions. Don't you know that?
All right, get to work, kiddo.
So it is possible to get involved in this work.
You like Money
but it
Masters
is
documentary by
cost-prohibitive,
Bill
so to
Still?
speak. We can
Check it out.
simply shine the spotlight on our sources of information, and we will not achieve results. It is clear to the whole world what happened, and even American analysts talk about it directly. It's true.
Yes, but here's a question you may be able to answer. You worked in Germany, famously. The Germans clearly know that their NATO partner did this, but and it damaged their economy greatly. It may never recover. Why are they being silent about it? That's very confusing.
Hey,
Why wouldn't the
IJP Americans
Germans
here.
say something about it?
Good bit of early history on fiat currency. Oh, nice.
This also confuses me. But today's German leadership is guided by the interests of the collective West.
The entire purpose of the U.S., like, if you want to think of the U.S. debt in, like, the idea of a loan, the U.S. debt as a loan is repaid with the brain power and the ingenuity of America. The more we make and the more we invent and the more we grow and increase our economy, our production, our, you know, whatever it is, that is the currency that pays back the U.S. debt.
Rather than its national interests. Otherwise, it is difficult to explain the logic of their action or inaction. After all, it is not only about Nord
So
Stream
good until
1,
idiocracy.
which
Yep.
was blown up, and the Nord Stream 2 was
Exactly.
damaged. But one pipe is safe and sound, and gas can be supplied to Europe through it. But Germany does not open it. We're ready, please. There's another route through Poland called Yamal Europe, which also allows for large flow. Poland has closed it, but Poland packs from the German hand. It receives money from the pan-European funds, and Germany is the main donor to these pan-European funds. Germany feeds Poland to a certain extent.
Can we just change debt?
And they close their
what we
route to
call
Germany.
debt, so people don't
Why?
think of it as normal debt? No, because what we would really have to do, if you want to actually change the way that people fundamentally think about debt, what you need to actually change what they think about is, you have to change the way that they think about taxes first. You have to change this idea that people have that what they pay in taxes pays for the stuff that we get. And my entire life up until about 4 years ago, maybe that's my brain thinking weird. 2015? So that would be, oh, it's almost a decade ago now. Man, I hate getting old. Up until about a decade ago, that's how I thought, was like all this stuff. But then that's when I got really invested in like people debating about the debt ceiling and stuff. And then I was like, wait a minute. How is there a debt ceiling? How is it that we can have like how can we even have debt and not go bankrupt? Like how does that work? Like how do you actually accomplish this idea? And when you start like thinking about like how do we actually accomplish this idea of like debt existing, then you're suddenly like, oh wait, yeah, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Texas pay the interest payments, but we can roll it over because of our talent in a nutshell. I don't even think that like works out with how things end up. Because there is no like the interest payment. What interest payment? What do you mean? Like what? Taxes force us to use the US dollar. They're too high. They don't need to be where they are. But they are also used to encourage and incentivize some things and de-incentivize other things. They're used as a backdoor for arresting people. Taxes have way more to do with everything else in the world than they do actual like paying back the debt. Like taxes are never to pay back debt. The interest paid to bondholders? No, the interest paid to bondholders, the interest that pays bonds, is just printed by the Treasury. If any of that were true, like we don't have, like, how does anything happen given how much and how often we have, oh, we got a tiger. Given how much debt we have and how long we've had that debt for. So it still requires inflation? Yeah. Yeah, that's literally how, like, everything works. But you mitigate inflation by creating more stuff. Inflation only occurs when there's not enough stuff to throw the money at. Which is why, like we were joking about earlier, when idiocracy is reality, then we're out of luck. But until that occurs, no problems. Come back, my men. Build a big old wall. More men. We need to colonize
understand.
space, basically.
Ukraine, to which the Germans supply weapons and give money. Germany is the second sponsor of the United States in terms of financial aid to Ukraine.
Money confusing.
There are two gas routes through Ukraine. They simply closed one route. The Ukrainians open the second route and please get gas from Russia. They do not open it. Why don't the Germans say, look guys, we give you money and weapons. Open up the valve, please. Let the gas from Russia pass through for us. We're buying liquefied gas at exorbitant prices in Europe, which brings the level of our competitiveness and economy in general down to zero. Do you want us to give you money? Let us have the decent existence. Make money for our economy, because this is where the money we give you comes from. They refuse to do so. Why? Ask them. That is what is like in their heads. Those are highly incompetent people.
Well, maybe the world is breaking into two hemispheres, one with cheap energy, the other without. And I want to ask you that. If we're now a multipolar world, obviously we are, can you describe the blocks of alliances? Who is in each side, do you think?
Listen, you
Who is your ally? Or is it you and China? You, China, and Iran against us?
have said that the world is breaking into two hemispheres. A human brain is divided into two hemispheres. One is responsible for one type of activities, the other one is more about creativity and so on. But it is still one and the same head. The world should be a single whole. Security should be shared rather than meant for the golden billion.
The golden
That is the
billion.
only scenario where the world could be stable, sustainable, and predictable. Until then, while the head is split in two parts, it is an illness, a serious adverse condition.
It is a sickness.
It is a period of severe disease that the world is going through now. But I think that thanks to honest journalism, this work is akin to work of the
He's
doctors.
fluffing
This
the
could somehow be
talk.
remedied.
Well, let's just give one example, the US dollar, which has kind of united the world in a lot of ways, maybe not to your advantage, but certainly to ours. Is that going away as the reserve currency, the universally accepted currency? How have sanctions, do you think, changed the dollar's place in the world?
You know, to use the dollar as a tool of foreign policy struggle is one of the biggest strategic mistakes made by the US political leadership.
Yes, your money should be worthless as the ruble.
The dollar is the cornerstone of the United States power. I think everyone understands very well that no matter how many dollars are printed, they are quickly dispersed all over the world.
Everywhere. Everyone has our dollars. Because they need them.
Inflation in the United States is minimal. It's about 3 or 3.4%, which is, I think, totally acceptable for the US. But they won't stop printing. What does the debt of $33 trillion tell us about?
What?
It is about the emission.
What does it tell us?
Nevertheless, it is the main weapon used by the United States to preserve its power across the world. As soon as the political leadership decided
You just
to
beat
use
Eventide
the US
Island?
dollar
Nice.
as a tool of political struggle, a blow was dealt to this American power. I would not like to use any strong language, but it is a stupid thing to do and a grave mistake.
It's a grave mistake to be number one? I think not.
Look at what is going on in the world. Even the United States allies are now downsizing their dollar reserves. Seeing this, everyone starts looking for ways to protect themselves. But the fact that the United States applies restrictive measures to certain countries, such as placing restrictions on transactions, freezing assets, etc., causes grave concern and sends a signal to the whole world.
Wait, because we
What
freeze
did we have
transactions?
here?
What was that about?
Until at the 4%, which is, I think, totally acceptable for the US. But they won't stop printing. What does the debt of $33 trillion
Yeah,
tell us
okay.
about?
Back to the
It
debt.
is about the emission.
Как только политическое руководство приняло решение использовать доллар в качестве инструмента политической борьбы,
Nevertheless, it is the main weapon used by the United States to preserve its power across the world. As soon as the political leadership decided to use the US dollar as a tool of political struggle, a blow was dealt to this American power.
Was it?
I would not like to use any strong language, but it is a stupid thing to do and a grave mistake.
To use the dollar as a weapon. So, by forcing everyone in the world to deal in dollars, by forcing China to use dollars, and that's why they've got a bunch of debt, Japan to use dollars, that's why they've got a bunch of our debt, because the dollars are the debt. Like, when you read the dollar, it's like, you know, convertible for $1 worth of value from the U.S. government, right? So our dollars are debt. And using that as a tool, as a weapon, is foolish. I think you only think it's foolish because you're losing and you can't figure out how to make it work yourself. Everybody get through here.
да, и начинают искать.
Look at what is going on in the world. Even the United States allies are now downsizing their dollar reserves. Seeing this, everyone starts looking for ways to protect themselves. But the fact that the United States applies restrictive measures to certain countries, such as placing restrictions on transactions, freezing assets, etc., causes grave concern and sends a signal to the whole world. What did we have here? Until 2022, about 80% of Russian foreign trade transactions were made in US dollars and euros. US dollars accounted for approximately 50% of our transactions with third countries, while currently it is down to 13%. It wasn't us who banned the use of the US dollar.
Приняли решение ограничить наше расчеты.
You sure?
We had no such intention. It was decision of the United States to restrict our transactions in US dollars. I think it is complete foolishness from the point of view of the interests of the United States itself and its taxpayers, as it damages the US economy, undermines the power of the United States across the world. By the way, our transactions in yuan accounted for about 3%.
Сейчас 34%.
Today, 34% of our transactions are made in rubles, and about as much, a little over 34% in yuan.
Yuans?
Why did the United States do this? My only guess is self-conceit. They probably thought it would lead to full collapse, but nothing collapsed. Moreover, other countries, including oil producers, are thinking of and already accepting payments for oil in yuan. Do you even realize what is going on or not? Does anyone in the United States realize this? What are you doing? You're cutting yourself off. All experts say this.
We don't listen to experts in
Ask
America.
any intelligent and thinking person in the United States what the dollar means for the US.
But
You're killing it with your own hands.
I think that's I think that's a fair assessment. The question is what comes next, and
That's a
maybe
fair
you trade
assessment.
one colonial power for another, much less sentimental and forgiving colonial power. I mean, is the BRICS, for example, in danger of being completely dominated by the Chinese economy in a way that's not good for their sovereignty? Do you worry about
Where are
that?
my horsies? Are they getting here?
Страшилки нам
Well, we have heard those boogeyman stories before.
Oh, here it comes. Okay.
It is a boogeyman story. We're neighbors with China. You cannot choose neighbors just as you cannot choose close relatives. We share a border of 1,000 kilometers with them. This is number one. Second, we have a centuries-long
way more
history of
villagers.
coexistence. We're used to it. Third, China's foreign policy philosophy is not aggressive. Its idea is to always look for compromise, and we can see that. The next point is as follows. We are always told the same boogeyman story, and here it goes again. Through an euphemistic form, but it is still the same boogeyman story. The cooperation
boogeyman
with China
story.
keeps increasing. The pace at which China's cooperation with Europe is growing is higher and greater than that of the growth of Chinese-Russian cooperation. Ask Europeans, aren't they afraid? They might be, I don't know. But they are still trying to access China's market at all costs, especially now that they are facing economic problems. Chinese businesses are also exploring the European market. Do Chinese businesses have small presence in the United States? Yes, the political decisions are such that they are trying to limit their cooperation with China. It is to your own detriment, Mr. Tucker, that you are limiting cooperation with China.
It's your own
You are
problem,
hurting
Mr.
yourself.
Tucker.
It is a delicate matter, and there are no silver bullet solutions, just as it is with the dollar. So, before introducing any illegitimate sanctions, illegitimate in terms of the Charter of the United Nations, one should think very carefully. For decision makers, this appears to be a problem.
So you said a moment ago that the world would be a lot better if it weren't broken into competing alliances, if there was cooperation globally. Well, one of the reasons you don't have that is because the current American administration is dead set against you. Do you think if there were a new administration after Joe Biden that you would be able to reestablish communication with the U.S. government? Or does it not matter who the president is?
Just kazoo.
I will tell you. But let me finish the previous thought. We, together with my colleague and friend, President Xi Jinping, set a
Colleague
goal
and
to
friend
reach
Xi
$200
Jinping!
billion of mutual trade with China this year. We have exceeded this level. According to our figures, our bilateral trade with China totals already $230 billion, and the Chinese statistics says it is $240 billion. One more important thing. Our trade is well balanced, mutually complementary in high-tech, energy, scientific research and development. It is very balanced. As for BRICS, where Russia took over the presidency this year, the BRICS countries are, by and large, developing very rapidly. Look, if memory serves me right, back in 1992, the share of the G7 countries in the world economy amounted to 47%, whereas in 2022 it was down to, I think, a little over 30%. The BRICS countries accounted for only 16% in 1992, but now their share is greater than that of the G7. It has nothing to do with the events in Ukraine. This is due to the trends of global development and world economy,
got a hole
as
in the
I
wall.
mentioned just now. And this is inevitable. This will keep happening. It is like the rise of the sun. You cannot prevent the sun from rising.
You cannot
have to
stop the
adapt
sun.
to it.
Oh no!
How do the United States adapt? With the help of force, sanctions, pressure, bombings, and use of armed forces. This is about self-conceit. Your political
Did
establishment
you say
does
BRIC
not
countries? Yes, BRICS. Britain. No, wait. Hold on. Let me look up the BRICS before I open my mouth and sound like an idiot. But it's sort of like a reverse NATO, I think, right? Oh no, my windmill. Brazil, Russia, India, and China. It's a sort of a trade organization. Foreign investment strategies. I gotta get this under wraps. This is sure everybody's got like the best. Upgrade my armors and everything here. I need so many more villagers.
Understand that the world is changing under objective circumstances. And in order to preserve your level, even if someone aspires, pardon me, to the level of dominance, you have to make the right decisions in a competent and timely manner. Such brutal actions, including with regard to Russia and, say, other countries, are counterproductive. This is an obvious fact. It has already become evident. You just asked me if another leader comes and changes something. It is not about the leader. It is not about the personality of a particular person. I had a very good
Cry about Dragon
relationship
Quest
with
5
say,
prices on
Bush.
eBay. Oh,
I know that in the
he's
United
okay,
States,
buddy.
he was portrayed as some kind of a country boy who does not understand much. I assure you that this is not the case. I think he made a lot of mistakes with regard to Russia too. I told you about 2008 and the decision in Bucharest to open the NATO's doors for Ukraine and so on. That happened during his presidency. He actually exercised pressure on the Europeans. But in general, on a personal human level, I had a very good relationship with him. He was no worse than any other American or Russian or European politician. I assure you, he understood what he was doing as well as others. I had such personal relationship with Trump as well. It is not about the personality of the leader. It is about the elite's mindset.
It's about the elite
If the idea
mindset.
of domination at any cost, based also on forceful actions, dominates the American society, nothing will change. It will only get worse. But if, in the end, one comes to the awareness that the world has been changing due to the objective circumstances, and that one should be able to adapt to them in time, using
Objective
the
or
advantages that
objective?
the U.S. still has today, then perhaps something may change. Look, China's economy has become the first economy in the world in purchasing power parity. In terms of volume, it overtook the US a long time ago. The USA comes second, then India, 1.5 billion people, and then Japan, with Russia in the 5th place. Russia was the first economy in Europe last year, despite all the sanctions and restrictions.
Yeah, we beat
Is it
your
normal from
trying
your
to
point of
stop
view?
us.
Sanctions, restrictions, impossibility of payments in dollars, being cut off from SWIFT services, sanctions against our ships carrying oil, sanctions against airplanes, sanctions in everything, everywhere. The largest number of sanctions in the world which are applied against Russia.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense
we
because
have
you're
become
huge.
Europe's first economy during this time. The tools that US uses don't work. Well, one has to think about what to do. If this realization comes to the ruling elites,
Your Chrome gets
then
obscenely
yes,
slow when you start
then
using
the first
emojis in
person
YouTube
of the
chat.
state
Oh no.
will act in anticipation of what the voters and the people who make decisions at various levels expect from this person. Then maybe something will change.
But you're describing two different systems. You say that the leader acts in the interest of the voters, but you also say these decisions are not made by the leader,
not
they're
of
made by the
stone.
ruling classes. You've run this country for so long, you've known all these American presidents. What are those power centers in the United States, do you think? Like, who actually makes the decisions?
Uh-oh.
I don't know. America is a complex country.
I don't know.
Conservative on one hand, rapidly changing on the other. It's not easy for us to sort it all out.
You're very
Who makes
confusing.
decisions in the elections? Is it possible to understand this when each state has its own legislation?
It's like fighting with a crazy person. You have like no idea what they're going to do, and then suddenly they're naked and like biting your ankles, and you're like, "Stop! What? No!" Like you can't fight America, man. We're the crazy guy who's just gonna show up naked, eating your ankles. Hola. Oh, all right. Just build me a new thingy.
Legislation. Each state regulates itself. Someone can be excluded from elections at the state level. It is a two-stage
They can't
electoral
actually,
system.
right?
It is very difficult for us to understand it.
Didn't we get a ruling on that? They cannot at the state level allow Trump. More of these. I need so many more Cavaliers and Cav Arches. All right, all of you are going to patrol to here. Okay, some of them are going inside, some of them are going outside. All right, we can deal with that. Somebody's still attacking the wall, right? I hear it. Okay, maybe we got him now. Have you heard of
Certainly, there are two
Florida
parties
man?
that are dominant, the Republicans and the Democrats. And within this party system, the centers that make decisions, that prepare decisions. Then, look, why, in my opinion, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, such an erroneous, crude, completely unjustified policy of pressure was pursued against Russia? After all, this is a policy of pressure. NATO expansion, support for the separatists in Caucasus, creation of a missile defense system. These are all
You
elements of pressure.
defend against missiles we want to launch.
Pressure. Then, dragging Ukraine into NATO is all about pressure, pressure, pressure. Why? I think, among other things, because excessive production capacities were created. During the confrontation with the Soviet Union, there were many centers created and specialists on the Soviet Union who could not do anything else. They convinced the political leadership that it is necessary to continue chiseling Russia, to try to break it up, to create on this territory several quasi-state entities, and to subdue them in a divided form, to use their combined potential for the future struggle with China. This is a mistake, including the excessive potential of those who worked for the confrontation with the Soviet Union. It is necessary to get rid of this. There should be new, fresh forces, people who look into the future and understand what is happening in the world.
I don't like the way he wants to get rid of stuff.
Look at
of
how
ours.
Indonesia is developing.
Indonesia?
600 million people. Where can we get away from that? Nowhere. We just have to assume that Indonesia will enter, it is already in, the club of the world's leading economies, no matter who likes it or dislikes it.
Indonesia? Huh.
Yes, we understand and are
They got good
aware
food.
that in the United States, despite all the economic problems, the situation is still normal, with the economy growing decently. The GDP is growing by 2.5%, if I'm not mistaken. But if we want to ensure the future, then we need to change our approach to what is changing. As I already said, the world would nevertheless change, regardless of how the developments in Ukraine end. The world is changing. In the United States themselves, experts are writing that the United States are nonetheless gradually changing their position in the world. It is your experts who write that. I just read them. The only question is how this would happen, painfully and quickly, or gently and gradually. And this is written by people who are not anti-American. They simply follow global development trends. That's it. And in order to assess them and change policies, we need people who think, look forward, can analyze and recommend certain decisions at the level of political leaders.
I just have to ask, you said clearly that NATO expansion eastward is a violation of the promise you all were made in 1990. It's a threat to your country. Right before you sent troops into Ukraine, the Vice President of the United States went to the Munich Security Conference and encouraged the President of Ukraine to join NATO. Do you think that was an effort to provoke you into military action?
Мы просто, я еще раз повторяю, мы многократно предлагали.
I repeat once again.
Patrol back and forth, everybody.
Repeatedly proposed to seek a solution to the problems that arose in Ukraine after 2014 coup d'etat.
How did you get in
peaceful
there?
means. But no one listened to us. And moreover, the Ukrainian leaders who were under the complete US control suddenly declared that they would not comply with the Minsk agreements. They disliked everything there
the
and
Minskies
continued
again.
military activity in that territory.
Шло освоение этой территории натовскими военными структурами под видом различных целей.
And in parallel, that territory was being exploited by NATO military structures under the guise of various personnel training and retraining centers. They essentially began to create bases there. That's all. Ukraine announced that the Russians were a non-titular nationality, while passing the laws that limit the rights of non-titular nationalities in Ukraine.
I like the way you say that.
Ukraine, having received all the southeastern territories as a gift from the Russian people, suddenly announced that the Russians were a non-titular nationality in that territory. Is that normal?
I don't know, is it?
All this put together led to the decision to end the war that neo-Nazis started in Ukraine in 2014.
The war the neo-Nazis started.
Do you think Zelensky has the freedom to negotiate a settlement to this conflict?
Yeah, do you?
I don't know the details. Of course, it's difficult for me to judge. But I believe he has, in any case, he used to have. His father fought against the fascists, Nazis, during World War II. I once talked to him about this. I said, Volodya, what are you doing?
Volodya.
Why are you supporting neo-Nazis?
What are you doing?
While your father fought against fascism. He was a frontline soldier. I will not tell you what he answered. This is a separate topic, and I think it's incorrect for me to do so. But as to the freedom of choice, why not? He came to power on the expectations of Ukrainian people that he would lead Ukraine to peace. He talked about this. It was thanks to this that he won the elections overwhelmingly. But then, when he came to power, in my opinion, he realized two things. Firstly, it is better not to clash with neo-Nazis and nationalists, because they are aggressive and very active. You can expect anything from them. And secondly, the US-led West supports them and will always support those who antagonize with Russia.
I don't like the way he said them at first when it sounded like he was saying the US will always support neo-Nazis. But then when he said those who antagonize Russia, I was like, yeah, of course. Of course we do. Of course that's how we roll. You want to fight Russia? We'll help. Easy. Easiest $10 we've ever spent. I need someone to start building more houses is what I need. Let's build them like deep in the back here. Dun, dun, dun.
It is beneficial and safe. So he took the relevant position despite promising his people to end the war in Ukraine. He deceived his voters.
But do you think at this point, as of February 2024, he has the latitude, the freedom to speak with you or your government directly about putting an end to this, which clearly isn't helping his country or the world? Can he do that, do you think?
Y para.
Ну, а почему нет? Он же
Yeah, petunias.
Why not?
глава государства.
He considers himself head of
Мы
state.
считаем в
He
России,
won
что
the
всё, что
elections.
произошло после 2014
Although we
года,
believe in Russia that the coup d'etat is the primary source of power for everything that happened after 2014. And in this sense,
The coup d'etat is the primary force of power. Ukraine is controlled by the U.S. government. Seems legit. Yeah, weren't we back to back upset with like how corrupt Ukraine was? Like first with like Trump's kids and then with Biden's kid. Like, wasn't it like, man, Ukraine's kind of shady. Man, Ukraine's kind of shady, and are like, oh shit, now we gotta fight Russia though. Like this will be. It's a better dollar for dollar if we fight Russia here. That's the true.
even today, government is flawed.
в качестве его признания.
But he considers himself the president, and he is recognized by the United States, all of Europe, and practically the rest of the world in such a capacity. Why not? He
Договорились,
can.
он же знал об этом. Более того,
We negotiated with Ukraine in Istanbul. We agreed.
Istanbul,
aware
not
of this.
Constantinople.
Moreover,
Istanbul,
the
not
negotiation
Constantinople.
group leader, Mr. Arhamia is his last name, I believe still heads the faction of the ruling party, the party of the president in the Rada.
президента в Раде,
He still heads the presidential faction in the Rada, the
он даже
country's
поставил свою
parliament.
подпись
He still sits there.
в этом документе.
He even put his preliminary signature on the document, I am telling you.
Мы были
But then
готовы
he
подписать.
publicly stated to the whole world, we were ready to sign this document, but Mr. Johnson, then the Prime Minister of Great Britain, came and dissuaded us from
Johnson.
doing this, saying
Boris
it was better
Johnson.
to fight Russia. They would give everything needed for us to return what was lost during the clashes with Russia, and we agreed with this proposal. Look, his statement has been published. He said it publicly.
Могут они так
Can they
сделать?
return to this or not?
Вопрос.
The
Хотят они
question
или
is, do they want it or not?
Еще господин президент
Further on, President of Ukraine issued a decree prohibiting negotiations with us.
Ну пусть он отменит.
Let him cancel that
Мы же не
decree,
отказывались.
and that's it.
Yes, come
We
back
have
to
never refused
negotiate. table.
negotiations, indeed.
Мы не отказывались.
We hear all the time, is Russia ready?
Публично отказали.
Yes, we have not refused. It was them who publicly refused. Well, let him cancel his decree and enter into negotiations. We have never refused. And the fact that they obeyed the demand or persuasion of Mr. Johnson, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, seems ridiculous and very sad to me.
Why
because,
so sad? Boris
Mr.
was a great
Arkamia
guy.
put it, we could have stopped those hostilities with war a year and a half ago already. But the British persuaded us and we refused this. Where is Mr. Johnson now?
Yes, where is
The
Mr.
war
Johnson?
continues.
That's a good question. Where do you think he is, and why did he do that?
That's a good question.
Хрен.
Now who's interviewing?
Если не понимать. Общее
Hell
условие было.
knows.
Почему-то
I don't
все
understand
сложилось
it myself.
что Россию можно победить на поле.
There was a general starting point. For some reason, everyone had the illusion that Russia could be defeated on the battlefield.
От чистого сердца, но
Because of arrogance, because of a pure heart, but not because of a great mind.
I mean, why not? Why can't Russia be
You've
defeated?
described the connection between Russia and Ukraine. You've described Russia itself a couple of times as orthodox. That's central to your understanding of Russia. You said you're orthodox. What does that mean for you? You're a Christian leader by your own description. So what effect does that have on you?
You know,
знаете, вот
as I already mentioned, in
как я уже сказал,
988,
985
Prince Vladimir himself was baptized following the example of his grandmother, Princess.
You claim to be Christian. How does that affect you? 1,000 years ago! What is this? What is this story we're about to get?
Olga. And then he baptized his squad. And then, gradually, over the course of several years, he baptized all the Rus. It was a lengthy process. from pagans to Christians.
Но в
It
конечном
took many
итоге вот
years.
это православие,
But in the end, this orthodoxy, Eastern Christianity, deeply rooted itself in the consciousness of the Russian people.
Long, long ago, a man was put
When
under
Russia
some water.
expanded and absorbed other nations who profess Islam, Buddhism, and Judaism, Russia has always been very loyal to those people who profess other religions. This is her strength. This is absolutely clear. And the fact is that the main postulates, main values are very similar, not to say the same, in all world religions I've just mentioned, and which are the traditional religions of the Russian Federation.
Let's go with
Russia.
the
Российской Федерации, России.
By the way, Russian authorities were always very careful about the culture and religion of those people who came into the Russian Empire.
Вот. Это все.
This, in my opinion, forms the basis of both
It,
security
this is
and
Japanese now.
stability of the Russian statehood. All the peoples inhabiting Russia basically consider it their motherhood. If, say, people move over to you or to Europe from Latin America, an even clearer and more understandable example, people come, but yet they have come to you or to European countries from their historical homeland. And people who profess different religions in Russia consider Russia their motherland. They have no other motherland.
We have no other motherland.
We are together. This is one big family. And our traditional values are very similar.
Strength in
I've
the
just
buildings.
mentioned one big family, but everyone has her own family. And this is the basis of our society. And if we say that the motherland and the family are specifically connected with each other,
Если мы говорим, что родина и семья
it is indeed the case, since it is impossible to ensure a normal future for our children and our families unless we ensure a normal, sustainable future for the entire country, for the motherland.
устойчивое будущее для всей
Would
That
you
is
say
why
that that's not
patriotic
woke?
sentiment is so strong in Russia.
But can I say that the one way in which the religions are different is that Christianity is specifically a nonviolent religion. Jesus says, turn the other cheek, don't kill. How can a leader who has to kill, of any country, how can a leader be a Christian? How do you reconcile that to yourself?
Ooh. Prove your faith, Putin.
Очень легко. Если речь идет о защите себя и своих.
It is very easy when it comes to protecting oneself and one's family, one's homeland. We won't attack anyone.
Госперевороты. Сначала боевики.
When did the developments in Ukraine start?
Вот с чего.
Since the coup d'etat and the hostilities in Donbass began, that's when they started. And we're protecting our people, ourselves, our homeland, and our future.
Она не во внешних проявлениях, не в том, чтобы ходить
As for religion in general,
и бить головой в пол.
you know, it's not about external manifestations. It's not about going to church every day or banging your head on the floor.
It's not about church.
И,
It is in the heart. And our culture is so human-oriented.
гений.
Dostoevsky, who was very well known in the West, and
Ah,
the
classic.
genius of Russian culture,
Crime
Russian
and
literature,
punishment for anyone
spoke a lot
unaware.
about the Russian soul.
Русский человек, российский человек, он думает больше о вечном, он думает больше о ценности.
After all, Western society is more pragmatic. Russian people think more about the eternal, about moral values.
What?
Прагматично.
I don't know, maybe
Russian people. You're so materialistic. Russian people. Meanwhile, Slavs squatting in their Adidas tracksuits, rocking the Mercedes, gold chains and vodka. Come off it. Just because one of those gold chains has a cross doesn't mean your people are holier than everyone in America. That's not how this works.
you won't agree with me, but Western culture is more pragmatic after
Дает
all.
возможность вот сегодняшнему этому
These are in 7,000
I'm not saying this
years.
is bad. It makes it possible for today's golden billion to achieve good success in
How can I call them the golden
even in
billion?
science
Like,
and so on.
что мы вроде как выглядим одинаково, но
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that we kind of look the same, but our
Well,
minds
so
are
do you
built a
see
little
the
different.
supernatural at work as you look out across what's happening in the world now? Do you see God at work? Do you ever think to yourself, these are forces that are not human?
God died in Zanzibar.
Да нет, я, честно говоря, так не думаю. Я думаю о том, что
No, to be honest, I don't think so.
общество развивается по своим внутренним.
My opinion is that the development of the world community is in accordance with the inherent laws, and those laws are what they are.
Так было всегда в истории человечества.
Inherent laws.
It's always been this way in the history of mankind. Some nations and countries rose, became stronger and more numerous, and then left the international stage, losing the status they had accustomed to.
Не нужно приводить примеры. Но начиная
There's probably no need for me to give examples, but we could start with the Genghis Khan and horde conquerors.
Genghis
the Golden
Khan!
Horde, and then
The
end with
Khans!
the Roman Empire.
человечество каждый
It seems that there has never been anything like the Roman Empire in the history of mankind.
потенциал варваров постепенно накапливался.
Nevertheless, the potential of the barbarians gradually grew, as did their population.
We're
In
gonna build
general,
a
the
wonder.
barbarians were getting stronger and begun to develop economically, as we would say today.
Экономически они стали укрепляться.
This eventually led to the collapse of the Roman Empire and the regime imposed by the Romans.
500
The
лет.
Roman
Это
Empire.
However, it took 5 centuries for the Roman Empire to fall apart.
в сегодняшней ситуации
The
разница.
difference with what is happening now
Процессы изменений.
is that all the processes of change are happening at a much faster pace than in Roman times.
It's true.
So when does the AI empire start?
Я всё-
Goofball talk.
You're asking increasingly more complicated questions. To answer them, you need to be an expert in big
для того,
numbers,
чтобы
big
ответить,
data,
надо быть,
and
конечно,
AI.
специалистом в
Mankind is currently facing many threats.
сфере
Due to the genetic researches, it is now possible to create a superhuman, a specialized human being, a genetically
Russia has
engineered athlete,
superhumans.
scientist, military man. There are reports that Elon Musk
Hand
had already
cannoneer.
had the chip implanted in the human brain in the USA.
Илон Маск внедрил уже чип какого-то
Bombard
What do you think of
cannon.
that?
Not enough gold. Dang it.
Ну, Маска, я думаю, что Маска
Well, I think there's no stopping Elon Musk. He will do as he sees fit. Nevertheless, you need to find some common ground with him, search for ways to persuade him. I think he's a smart person, I truly believe he is. So you need to reach an agreement with him because this process needs to be formalized and subjected to certain rules.
того, что будет происходить с ним в связи с
The government must control the brain chips.
Humanity has to
Because
consider what
otherwise
is
it will be a
going to
problem.
happen due to the newest development in genetics
Поэтому
or in AI. One can make an approximate prediction of what will happen.
угрозу своему существованию от ядерного оружия все начали обладатели ядерного
Once
оружия начали
mankind
между собой
felt an
договариваться.
existential threat coming from nuclear weapons,
Неаккуратное применение
all nuclear nations began to come to terms with one another since they realized the negligent use of nuclear weaponry could drive humanity to extinction.
искусственного интеллекта, либо генетики, либо еще каких-то современных направлений, остановить которые
It
невозможно.
is impossible to stop research in genetics or AI today.
I can't
just
do an
as it
aggressive
was
walk.
impossible to stop the use of gunpowder back in the day.
Эти исследования все равно будут. Но когда человечество почувствует угрозу для себя,
But as soon as we realize that the threat comes from unbridled and uncontrolled development of AI, or genetics, or any other field, the time will come to reach an international agreement on how to regulate these things.
I appreciate all the time you've given us. I just got to ask you one last question, and that's about someone who's very famous in the United States, probably not here, Evan Gershkovich, who's the Wall Street Journal reporter. He's 32, and he's been in prison for almost a year. This is a huge story in the United States, and I just want to ask you directly, without getting into the details of it or your version of what happened, if as a sign of your decency, you would be willing to release him to us and we'll bring him back to the United States.
Oh, the guy. Give us the guy.
Мы столько сделали жестов доброй воли, что, мне кажется, мы исчерпали все лимиты.
We have done so many gestures of goodwill out of decency that I think we have run out of them.
Ни разу не ответил. Но
We have never seen anyone reciprocate to us in a similar manner.
что мы
However, in theory, we can say that we do not rule out that we can do that
исключаем того, что мы можем это
if our
сделать
partners
при
take reciprocal steps.
встречном движении со стороны наших
When I talk about the partners, I first of all refer to special services.
представителей специальных служб.
Special services are in contact with one another. They are talking about the matter in question.
На то, чтобы не решить это.
There is no taboo to settle this
Мы
issue.
готовы решать.
We are willing to solve it.
Есть определенные
There's
условия,
no
которые
taboo.
But there are certain terms being discussed via special services
по
channels.
партнерским каналам между спецслужбами.
I believe an agreement can be reached.
So typically, I mean, this stuff has happened for obviously centuries. One country catches another spy within its borders, it trades it for one of its own intel guys in another country. I think what makes, and it's not my business, but what makes this different is the guy's obviously not a spy, he's a kid. And maybe he was breaking your law in some way, but he's not a super spy, and everybody knows that. And he's being held hostage in exchange, which is true. With respect, it's true, and everyone knows it's true. So maybe he's in a different category. Maybe it's not fair to ask for, you know, somebody else in exchange for letting him out. Maybe it degrades Russia to do that.
Вы знаете, ну, можно как угодно говорить, что такое шпион, что не шпион.
You know, you can give different interpretations to what constitutes a spy, but there are certain things provided by law.
Get him.
If a person gets secret information and does that in conspiratorial manner, then this is qualified as espionage. And that is exactly what he was doing. He was receiving classified, confidential information, and he did it covertly. Maybe he did that out of carelessness or his own initiative. Considering the sheer fact, this is qualified as espionage. The fact has been proven, as he was caught red-handed when he was receiving this information.
Oh no, his
If
hands
it
were
had
red.
been some far-fetched excuse, some fabrication, something not proven, it would have been a different story then. But he was caught red-handed when he was secretly getting confidential information. What is it then?
But are you suggesting that he was working for the US government or NATO, or he was just a reporter who was given material he wasn't supposed to have? Those seem like very different things.
Я не знаю, на
Yes.
кого он работал.
We will continue.
I don't know who he was working for. But I would like to reiterate that getting classified information in secret is called espionage, and he was working for the US Special Services, some other agencies. I don't think he was working for Monaco, as Monaco is hardly interested in getting that information. It is up to special services to come to an agreement.
По нашему мнению, не связано.
Some groundwork has been laid. There are people who, in our view, are not connected with special services. Let me tell you a story about a person serving a sentence in an allied country of the US.
Соображений, ликвидировал в
That
одной из
person, due to patriotic sentiments, eliminated a bandit in one of the European capitals.
Во время событий на Кавказе, знаете, что
During the events in the Caucasus, do you know what he was doing?
хочется говорить, но тем не менее.
I don't want to say that, but I will do it anyway. He was
Say
letting
it.
our soldiers, taken prisoner, on the road and then drove his car over their heads. What kind of person is that?
И человек,
Can he even be called human?
патриот,
I
который
mean, probably.
из Европы.
But there was a patriot who eliminated him in one of the European capitals.
Инициативе или нет,
Whether he did it of his own volition or not, that is a different question.
Yeah, but Evan
Вот он-
Gershkovich didn't
вот он-
do that. I mean, that's a completely different. I mean, this is a
Да, он не-
32-year-old like
Ну, он
newspaper
делал, да,
reporter.
He committed something different.
Да, он не просто журналист. Я повторю еще раз, это журналист.
He's not just a journalist. I reiterate, he's a journalist who was secretly getting confidential information.
Которые
Yes, it is different, but still, I'm talking about other people who are essentially controlled by the US authorities, wherever they are serving a sentence. There is an ongoing dialogue between the special services. This has to be resolved in a calm, responsible, and professional manner.
We've got the
They're
duck.
keeping in touch, so let them do their work.
We'll see.
I do not rule out that the person you refer to, Mr. Gershkovitz, may return to his motherland. By the end of the day, it does not make any sense to keep him in prison in Russia. We want the US Special Services to think about how they can contribute to achieving the goals our special services are pursuing. We are ready to talk. Moreover, the talks are underway. And there have been many successful examples of these talks crowned with success. Probably this is going to be crowned with success as well.
Yay, success
But
talks.
we have to come to an agreement.
I hope you let him out. Mr. President, thank you.
I hope you let him out.
Мне тоже.
I also want him to return to his homeland at last. I'm absolutely sincere. But let me say once again, the dialogue continues. The more public we render things of this nature, the more difficult it becomes to resolve them.
Does it?
Everything has to be done in calm manner.
I wonder if that's
Закрытом
true
режиме.
with the war, though. Also, I mean, I guess I want to ask one more question, which is, and maybe you don't want to say so for strategic reasons, but are you worried that what's happening in Ukraine could lead to something much larger and much more horrible?
Bigger
How
war.
motivated are you?
How
just to call
terrified
the
are
US
you?
government and say, let's come to terms.
Come to terms.
Послушайте, я же сказал.
I already said that we did not refuse to talk. We're willing to negotiate. The western side and Ukraine is obviously a satellite state of the US. It is evident. I do not want you to take it as if I'm looking for a strong word or an insult, but we both understand what is happening.
Финансовая поддержка 152 миллиарда.
The financial support, 72 billion US dollars, was provided.
72 billion.
Germany ranks second,
Equivalent.
then other European
Equivalent
countries
dollars.
come.
Огромный поток идет.
Dozens of billions of US dollars are going
course,
to
yeah.
Ukraine.
Конечно, поэтому,
There's a huge
поэтому,
influx of
ну,
weapons.
скажите,
In this case, you should tell the current Ukrainian leadership to stop and come to negotiating table, rescind this absurd decree. We did not refuse.
Sure, but you already said it. I didn't think you meant it as an
Lombard
insult because
Tower.
you already
Oh.
said correctly. It's been reported that
I like
Ukraine
that
was
idea.
prevented from negotiating a peace settlement by the former British Prime Minister acting on behalf of the Biden administration. So, of course, they're a satellite. Big countries control small countries. That's not new. And that's why I asked about dealing directly with the Biden administration, which is making these decisions, not President Zelensky of Ukraine.
ну, если администрация Зеленского на
All right, let's go with this crew.
отказалась от переговоров, я исхожу
Well,
из того, что
if the Zelensky administration in Ukraine refused to negotiate,
пусть теперь
I assume they did it under the instruction from
правильное
Washington.
решение. Пусть откажут
If
от
Washington
какое-то
believes it to be the
производство.
wrong decision, let it abandon it. Let it find a delicate excuse so that no one is insulted. Let it come up with a
Там
way
принято
out.
решение. Пусть они от него отказываются.
It was not us who made this decision, it was them.
Всё.
So let them go
Они
back on
приняли
it.
неправильное решение.
That is
Теперь мы
it.
должны
Wonder why I
искать
can't
выход
build
из
that
этого
one, though.
решения.
However, they made the wrong
kinda
decision,
weird.
and now we have to look for a way out of the situation to correct their mistakes. They did it, so let them correct it themselves. We support this.
So I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding what you're saying. I don't think that I am. I think you're saying you want a negotiated settlement to what's happening.
Everybody wants a negotiated settlement. They just want to be the winner in the negotiation. That's the difference.
Правильно. Но мы
Right.
уже добились этого.
And we made it. We prepared a huge document in Istanbul that was initialed by the head of the Ukrainian delegation. He affixed his signature to some of the provisions, not to all of it. He put his signature and then he himself said, we were ready to sign
1
it and
years.
the war would have been over long ago, 18 months ago. However, Prime Minister Johnson came, talked us out of it, and we missed that chance. Well, you missed it, you made a mistake.
I'm pretty
Then get
sure.
back to that.
I'm pretty sure that's not too different from the truth. Like, that's not like him being like, well, you know, I was gonna sign it, but then like they made me not. Like, I'm pretty sure that Boris Johnson is actually the one who messed up those discussions. I've heard that, like, people report that they're like, oh, Boris Johnson came out and said, you know, XYZ to Putin and Ukraine. It was basically like, oh, well, you know, Ukraine can, you know, just keep fighting.
That is all. Why do we have to bother ourselves and correct somebody else's mistakes? I know one can say it is our mistake. It was us who intensified the situation and decided to put an end to the war that started in 2014 in Donbass, as I have already said, by means of weapons. Let me get back to further in history. I already told you this. We were just discussing it. Let us go back to 1991, when we were promised that NATO would not expand, to 2008, when the doors to NATO opened to the declaration of state sovereignty of Ukraine, declaring Ukraine a neutral state. Let us go back to the fact that NATO and US military bases started to appear on the territory of Ukraine, creating threats to us. Let us go back to coup d'etat in Ukraine in 2014. It is pointless though, isn't it? We may go back and forth endlessly, but they stopped negotiations. Is it a mistake? Yes. Correct it. We are ready. What else is needed?
Do you think it's too humiliating at this point for NATO to accept Russian control of
Probably.
what was 2 years ago Ukrainian
Yeah, I
territory?
built a wonder. Look at that.
Я же сказал.
I said let them think how to do it with dignity. There are options if there is a will. Up until now, there has been the uproar and screaming about inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield.
Стратегического поражения России, поражения.
Now they are apparently coming to realize that it is difficult to achieve, if possible at all. In my opinion, it is impossible by definition. It is never going to happen. It seems to me that now, those who are in power in the West have come to realize this as well.
Подумайте.
If so, if the realization has set in, they have to think what to do next. We are ready for this dialogue.
Would you be willing to say, congratulations, NATO, you won, and just keep the situation where it is now?
Keep firing, everyone.
Ну, вы знаете, это предмет переговоров.
Oh, nice.
You know, it is a subject matter for the
Bulldoze.
negotiations. No one is willing to conduct, or, to put it more accurately,
Точнее сказать, хотят.
they are willing but do not know how to do
There
it.
we go. Roll them.
I know they want it.
Come
It
on,
is not
boys.
just I see it, but I know they do want it. But they're struggling to understand how to do it. They have driven the situation to the point where we are at. It is not us who have done that. It is our partners, opponents who have done that.
Keep built.
Well, now
Good.
let them think how to reverse the situation. We're not against it. It would be funny if it were not so
Get into the
sad.
center of town.
Да, было бы смешно, если бы не было так.
This endless mobilization in Ukraine, the hysteria, the domestic
Russia. Oh,
problems.
still.
Sooner or later, it will.
What else we got? Okay. Still good.
Result in agreement.
Истерика там, внутренние проблемы.
You know, this probably sounds strange given the current situation,
Все равно договорились. И
but the relations between the two peoples will be rebuilt anyway.
нынешней ситуации прозвучит.
It will
It's
take a
heavy,
lot of
sir.
time, but they will heal.
Между народами уставом потребуется много времени.
I'll give you very unusual examples.
Why? Why unusual examples?
There is a combat encounter on the battlefield. Here's a specific example. Ukrainian soldiers got encircled. This is an example from real life. Our soldiers were shouting to them, "There is no chance. Surrender yourselves. Come out and you will be alive." Suddenly,
Got
the
it.
Ukrainian soldiers were screaming from there in Russian, perfect Russian, saying, "Russians, do not surrender." And all of them perished.
Is that what they
still
said?
identify themselves as Russian. What is happening is, to a certain extent, an element of a civil war. Everyone in the West thinks that the Russian people have been split by hostilities forever. No, they will be reunited. The unity is still
They
there.
will be reunited. Like that's
Why
a
are the
rough
Ukrainian
thing to say.
authorities dismantling the Ukrainian Orthodox Church? Because it brings together not only the territory, it brings together our souls. No one will be able to separate the soul.
Yeah, that's a
Shall we end here?
a heck of a
is
thing
there
to say.
anything else?
No, I think that's great.
Спасибо.
Thank you, Mr. President.
No, I think that's great. All right, well, that was that. That was the Vladimir Putin interview. I hope that was everything everyone hoped it would be. I know I got a lot out of it. It's kind of crazy to have somebody like Putin literally exist in our world. Where we still have this sort of giant country in the other hemisphere that just sort of looks at everything we do and hates it and thinks we're the bad guys. It's a weird feeling to be like, oh, they think we're the baddies. And like, then you also have, of course, you know, goof troops like Hassan and stuff who actually think that we are the baddies, and it's like, oh, come on, guys, really, you're gonna take warlord who's currently like just invading a place to get the land back from a time like years ago. That's who you're that's who you're up against, or that's who you're siding with here. But man, if it isn't just a wild world we live in. Dude talked about Jack. Yeah, I mean, as far as like actual like, oh, we got some important stuff, we learned something nice or new, definitely not. Oh, look, it's all the relics. Interesting. He had like all of them. But from what he did say, you get a very like clear picture of like, oh, Russia really is in this just for territorial. Like a lot of stuff sort of confirmed about what we thought their entire goals were, and like not really mincing words about it either. Like, you know, yeah, we're going in, we're gonna take this land back. We want this land back. Obviously, we got the frou-frou like, oh, we're gonna get rid of the Nazis, and oh, we're gonna get rid of the what was the other one? Oh, NATO's too close to our borders. Like we get those talking point, you know, but like at the end of the day, he started with, do you want the serious talk or do you want the show? And he's like, oh, serious talk. And then serious talk was our freaking so much time learning about history of Russia with Papa Putin. And it was just ridiculous. How do we still got people? They coming in over here now? I'm glad we actually watched it, because now when you see posts, when you see videos that are like, I can't believe Tucker let Putin get away with X or say Y, or, you know, any number of things that he's gonna, or someone's going to write or post or say, you've seen it, you've been there, You watched the whole 2-hour interview. You watched it, you enjoyed it, and you were there.